Chapter 2604. Meng Yao sat on the ground and took out a guqin. She placed it across her knees and gently stroked the strings with her jade-like fingers. A faint celestial sound rang out. As soon as the sound of the guqin started, everyone's attention was instantly taken away and they were unconsciously immersed in it. Even the immortal tea in the hands of the cultivators became tasteless. The sound of the guqin clearly rang in the ears of the immortals and monks, but their hearts were abnormally quiet. The surroundings seemed to become extremely empty and only the sound lingered. Meng Yao's left hand pressed the strings to pick the sound while her right hand stroked the strings. Her movements were complicated and dazzling. Sometimes the sound of the guqin was deep and distant, like the flow of time, making people reminisce about the past. Sometimes it was like the sound of wind chimes, ethereal like an immortal. Sometimes it was soft and long, like a fairy whispering in the ear. Sometimes it was solemn and heavy, like a yellow bell. After an unknown period of time, the song ended, but the sound lingered. The immortals and monks were still immersed in it and did not recover for a long time. Even Junyu nodded secretly. Although she was disdainful of some of Meng Yao's actions, she had to admit that Meng Yao was indeed outstanding in terms of guqin skills. She was indeed worthy of the title of Guqin Immortal. Qin Su clapped and praised, "I have long heard of Guqin Immortal's music. It is untainted by the mortal world, like the sound of nature, lingering for 3 days. I am fortunate to hear it today. It is indeed worthy of its reputation." "Fellow Taoist, you are too kind." Meng Yao smiled. "Amitabha." Shi Wunyan said softly, "Benefactor, your guqin is moving. I admire you." The immortals and monks slowly woke up and exclaimed. Meng Yao looked humble and calm, but she was extremely proud in her heart. After the song, Meng Yao instantly became the center of attention and attracted everyone's attention. Fairy Luo Hua's immortal tea had already been forgotten by the immortals and monks. Fairy Luo Hua was indignant, but she did not dare to show it and could only sit back down. Yunju saw this scene and smiled faintly. She was not surprised. She and Meng Yao were both in the divine firmament immortal realm and were both princesses of the immortal kingdom. They had known each other for a long time and knew Meng Yao better. No matter where she went, Meng Yao had a way to become the center of attention and dazzle everyone. Other than Yunju, Mo Qing was also unaffected by Meng Yao's music. Yunju looked at Mo Qing, who was sitting quietly beside her, and smiled. Mo Qing always seemed to have a way to immerse herself in her own world and no one could affect her. Under the divine tree of Zhenmu, the true celestial and arhat rankings were hanging high. The geniuses were gathered, and their heroism reached the clouds. They were pointing at the mountains and rivers. There was also a fairy beside them, and the sound of the zither was lingering. It made people envious and fascinated. Yun Mubai, who was ranked 6th on the true celestial roll, praised, "In my opinion, fellow Taoist Meng Yao is not only the zither celestial of the divine firmament celestial realm, but also the zither celestial of the 9 clouds celestial realm, or even the entire heaven realm." Not bad. The Moonlight Sword Immortal also nodded and said, "Even compared to the ancient Guqin Dao masters, fellow Taoist Meng Yao is not inferior. In fact, she's even better." Wu Go Nun, who was ranked 2nd on the Arhat list, suddenly said, "I heard that in this life, there is a zither devil in the demon domain. It seems that his attainments in the zither Dao are not shallow." When Meng Yao heard the 2 words zither demon, the smile on her face froze. But soon she recovered and said, "I know a little about this zither demon. She was originally from the divine firmament immortal domain. In a ruin, she stole an ancient zither that I took a fancy to and fled to the demon domain. She never came back." Qin Su raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, "What zither demon? Why haven't I heard of her?" "She's just a nobody." The Moonlight Sword Immortal smiled faintly and said, "I heard that she's only a sky immortal, not worth mentioning. She's on a completely different level from fellow Taoist Meng Yao." Qin Su sneered and said, "A sky immortal is worthy of being called the zither demon? There's really no one in the demon domain." Lin Lei suddenly said, "I heard that this zither demon's cultivation is not weak. She's one of the 7 emotions demon generals of the Heaven Baron sect, along with her Tao companion. The Heaven Baron sect. Hearing these 3 words, the hearts of the cultivators trembled. Over the years, in the demon domain, apart from the appearance of Emperor Bo Sun and the World Devastator Demon Emperor, the most famous sect was the Heaven Baron sect. It was not that the Heaven Baron sect was strong, but the patriarch of the Heaven Baron sect was really terrifying. The supreme true demon, Araki Takashi. Zhuo Wuchen curled his lips slightly and said, "The so-called 7 emotions demon generals are nothing to be afraid of. Apart from Feng Kentian, who's a demon king, the rest are all sky immortals. However, I heard that the patriarch of the Heaven Baron sect, Araki Takashi True Demon, has some tricks up his sleeve. He wreaked havoc at the Immortality Peach Banquet in the Jade Heaven Immortal Domain, killed thousands of true immortals, and killed the lords of the 5 immortal cities." Fairy Jialan suddenly asked, "I heard that when he went through the tribulation, he attracted the 10th true one heavenly tribulation. I wonder if it's true." Qin Su laughed loudly and said, "This rumor is just a group of demon domain's rascals creating hype for him. Who would believe it? Even the emperors of antiquity had only gone through 99 heavenly tribulations. How could Araki Takashi attract the 10th heavenly tribulation?" "That's right." The Moonlight Sword Immortal also nodded and looked at Mo Qing, who was not far away, and said, "Junior sister, see? I've already said that this is too ridiculous. It can't be true." "I believe it's true." Mo Qing didn't argue with him. She just replied calmly. Lin Lei said in a low voice, "Whether the 10th heavenly tribulation is true or not, Araki Takashi's tricks are indeed terrifying. I've seen with my own eyes that the lords of the 5 immortal cities could not withstand a single blow from him." Hearing this, the faces of the geniuses on the True Immortal Ranking Board and Arhat Ranking Board darkened. The lords of the 5 immortal cities were all experts who had the potential to compete for the True Immortal Ranking Board. Lin Lei said that the lords of the 5 immortal cities could not withstand a single blow from Araki Takashi. Was he implying that they could not withstand a single blow from Araki Takashi? Humph. Qin Su snorted and said mockingly, "After all, you're from the lower world. You're too timid. You're scared after being threatened." "What did you say?" Lin Lei glared at him and questioned loudly. Shi Wunyan smiled and said, "Araki Takashi is the supreme true demon. Our 2 realms also have supreme true immortals and supreme arhats. Benefactor Lin Lei, why do you want to boost the morale of others and destroy our own?" During the battle in the Devil's Den, all the news pointed to the World Devastator Demon Emperor. Almost no one paid attention to the existence of Araki Takashi. The cultivators did not know that Araki Takashi was also present at that time. He even killed several immortal kings in the Devil's Den. Junyu looked in the direction of the Demon's Den and said slowly, "No matter what, Araki Takashi is a powerful and terrifying opponent. If there's a chance, I'd like to fight with him to see who's better." Junyu was warlike by nature and had just won the title of Supreme True Immortal. There were not many cultivators who were qualified to be her opponent. Araki Takashi, who was known as the Supreme True Demon, was one of them. Qin Su sneered and stood up. He pointed in the direction of the Demon's Den and said loudly, "If Araki Takashi dares to take half a step into the 9 Clouds celestial realm, you don't have to do anything. I can kill him alone." Supreme True Demon? 10th Heavenly Tribulation? They are nothing in front of me. Is that so? At this moment, a voice came from the depths of the Demon's Denver. Chapter 2605. Hearing the voice, the cultivators under the divine tree were startled and looked toward the source of the voice. Mo Qing's body trembled, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? Is it him? He actually dares to come? Mo Qing subconsciously looked at Yunju, who was beside her, with an inquiring look. Yunju was also a little surprised at this time. Obviously, she knew the identity of the person and nodded at Mo Qing. After receiving Yunju's reply, Mo Qing was finally sure. She also quickly looked in the direction of the demon area. Between the immortal area and the demon area, there was a bottomless abyss, and the divine tree was rooted in this abyss. According to legend, this abyss was created by the world-destroying demon emperor in a rage, and it almost split the heaven realm into two. Fortunately, the divine tree was there, and its countless roots connected the two areas, so the heaven realm was not completely separated. In the immortal demon abyss, there were layers of fog that blocked one's vision and divine sense. In the direction of the demon area, through the fog, a few figures could be vaguely seen walking over. Yunju turned to look at Su Zimo, who was at the peak of Jianmu Mountain, and she was puzzled. Even with her thoughts, she could not understand why Su Zimo would ask Araki Takashi to come over at this time. What was Araki Takashi trying to do? This was the Nine Heavens Convention, and the geniuses of the two areas had gathered. There was also a group of celestial kings. Even if Araki Takashi could suppress the true celestials on the two lists, how could he deal with more than 100 celestial kings present? Moreover, there were more than 20 peerless celestial kings among them. Although Araki Takashi had the prison-suppressing cauldron and could break the void and leave this place at any time, if the celestial kings joined forces and sealed the void, they would completely cut off this way of leaving. On the peak of Jianmu Mountain, many celestial kings also sensed something. They stood up one after another and looked in the direction of the demon area. Soon, a group of cultivators walked out of the fog. The person in the lead was wearing a purple robe and a silver mask. He was riding a huge heavenly wolf demonic beast, and he slowly walked over. The man and his mount walked at the forefront, emitting a strong pressure. Infernal Domains Araki Takashi. Many genuine immortals from the Jade Heaven celestial realm recognized Wu Dao immediately. They said with hatred and fear in their voices, "It's Araki Takashi?" All the immortal kings present looked at each other, and they were slightly surprised and frowned inwardly. Of course, all the immortal kings had heard of Araki Takashi's name long ago. However, this was the first time most of the immortal kings had seen Wu Dao in person. Their consciousness probed the martial Dao body several times, but they couldn't find out the martial Dao body's cultivation base. However, through the aura that Wu Dao's true body exuded, the immortal kings could roughly determine that Wu Dao's true body had yet to step into the Grotto Heaven realm, not even reaching the half-step Grotto Heaven realm. It was just that in the eyes of the immortal kings, Araki Takashi was naturally not worth mentioning. It was mainly because of Emperor Bo-sun behind Araki Takashi that the immortal kings were so afraid of. Why did Araki Takashi come here this time? Did his actions represent Monarch Bo-sun? Was Emperor Bo-sun nearby? The immortal kings of the two realms looked at each other and communicated with their consciousness. They decided not to make a move for the time being and observe Araki Takashi's next move. Immortal King Ling Long frowned slightly. She had learned about Araki Takashi's true identity from the human Emperor Lin Zhan, so she glanced at Su Zimo discreetly. Even she couldn't guess the purpose of Araki Takashi's visit. However, when she saw Su Zimo's calm expression, as if he had been prepared for this, she felt slightly relieved. Under the divine tree of Jianmu, the perfected immortal realm experts were shocked and stood up one after another. They looked at Wu Dao, who was slowly walking over, with unfriendly expressions and vigilant expressions. Araki Takashi was the most notorious demon in the demon realm in recent years. The cultivators didn't dare to be careless. Jun Yu's eyes were fixed on Wu Dao's body, and her eyes were filled with battle intent. Shi Wunyan also stared at Wu Dao's body without blinking. There was a hint of playfulness and interest in his eyes, as if he wanted to see something from him. Unfortunately, Wu Dao's body was wearing the Mo Luo mask, and his body seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mysterious fog. No one could see through him. Behind Wu Dao's body, there were 6 cultivators walking side by side. The cultivator on the far left was tall and had long hair. As he strode forward, he exuded a heroic aura and his eyes were like lightning. He was the Thunder Emperor of Heaven's Wrath, Feng Kenan. Although Feng Cantion had changed a lot over the years, many celestial kings from the divine firmament celestial realm recognized him immediately. When Celestial King Ling Long saw an old friend from Tianhuang, she was excited and overjoyed. She wanted to stand up. However, Feng Kenan, who was separated by the abyss of divinities and demons, looked in their direction and shook his head slightly. Celestial King Ling Long took a deep breath and didn't act rashly. Celestial King Zhangya of the Great Jin Celestial Country snorted coldly. It's Feng Cantillon. He dares to show himself? After all, he has already formed a grotto heaven and become a celestial king. He must have some tricks up his sleeve, said another celestial king. Celestial King Zhangya sneered and said, So what? He's just a celestial king of a small grotto heaven. His battle strength is limited. He's worlds apart from peerless celestial kings. Next to Feng Canon was a cold-looking man with a long sword in his hand. He was Shura Yenbeichen. Next to Yenbeichen was a beautiful girl in a pink dress. She smiled at the continent of the 9 clouds as if she could make everyone fall head over heels for her. Many cultivators looked at the girl's smile and couldn't help but be mesmerized. Demons and heretics. A celestial king exclaimed softly. He used a sound domain secret technique to wake many cultivators up. Hee hee. Demoness G wasn't angry. She chuckled and winked at the crowd. Her every move, every frown, and every smile was filled with charm. Moreover, it was without a trace, as if it came from her heart and flowed naturally. Next to Demoness G stood a young monk. His eyes were clear and bright, and he seemed to be filled with infinite wisdom. Ming Zhen. On the Pure Land side, a Buddhist recognized Ming Zhen and murmured in surprise, He's not dead. Back then, the group of monks who had entered Avicii had all died there, except for Ming Zhen. Everyone thought that Ming Zhen had died. They didn't expect him to still be alive. He had joined the Tianhuang sect and joined the Demon Zone. Next to Ming Zhen was a man and a woman. The man was holding a jade flute with a melancholic expression. The woman was holding a zither in one hand and the man's arm in the other. Her eyes were filled with love. From afar, they looked like a pair of immortal couples. It's them. Zither Fairy's expression turned cold when she saw the man and woman. Murderous intent flashed in her eyes. The patriarch of the Tianhuang sect, Araki Takashi, had brought the 7 Emotions Demon General to the continent of the 9 Clouds meeting. It was also the first time he had appeared in front of the crowd. It was a huge shock. There weren't many people on the other side. Even if Araki Takashi's mount was included, there were only 8 of them. However, these 8 people were facing the heroes of the 9 Clouds Immortal Region and the Pure Lands. In terms of aura, they weren't inferior at all. Chapter 2606. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, Feng Cantillon had made a name for himself in the heaven world. He had obtained the title of a true celestial at the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds. Now, he had become a celestial king. Such a big group of people couldn't suppress him at all. Tian Lang's former master was Imperial Emperor Bo Sun. He had seen even bigger groups of people. This was nothing. Since he had already come here, there was no way out. Why should he be afraid? Who are those people next to Feng Cantillon? They must be the 7 Emotions demonic generals of the Tianhuang sect. They've become famous in the demon region. It turns out that apart from Feng Cantillon, who's a celestial king, the others are just celestial immortals. Hee, I thought they were some incredible strong cultivators. Many cultivators were discussing on the top of Jianmu Mountain. Most of the people at the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds were true celestial immortals. They didn't take Yenbeichen and the other celestial immortals seriously. Why did Araki Takashi and Feng Cantillon come here with a few celestial immortals? Could it be that the tiny Tianhuang sect wants to fight against our 2 territories? Hee, unless Araki Takashi doesn't want to live anymore. In the eyes of the celestial immortals and monks, Araki Takashi and the others were too weak. They weren't worth mentioning. The meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds was a gathering of the heroes of the 2 territories. There were more than 100,000 true celestial immortals and more than 100 celestial kings. If all the celestial immortals attacked together, Araki Takashi and the others would be drowned. A cultivator sighed and said, Anyway, Araki Takashi is really brave. He only brought a few people and he dared to come to the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds. Only the ignorant are fearless. Another person disagreed. under the divine tree of Jianmu Mountain. Araki Takashi, you still dare to come to the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds? Chin-su looked at Araki Takashi coldly and said slowly, do you think the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds is like the Feast of Peaches? You can come and go as you please? Chin-su had a supreme true immortal, a supreme arhat, 200 peak true immortals, and a group of immortal kings behind him. Naturally, he had nothing to fear. Zhuo Wuchen unsheathed his immaculate sword and flicked it with his finger. The sword made a clear sound as he said, I've heard that Araki Takashi is a supreme titled martial artist. My immaculate sword would like to ask for guidance. The Moonlight Sword Immortal smiled faintly and said, there's no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. If he dares to come, then let him have a taste of my Moonlight Sword. Araki Takashi is a cruel murderer who dares to take half a step into the 9 firmaments immortal region. I'm willing to kill him and send him into the cycle of reincarnation. Arhat Suba, ranked 4th on the Arhat list, said in a deep voice. Under the divine tree of the Jianmu, the immortals and monks all spoke boldly, their auras soaring to the heavens. Mo Qin couldn't take it anymore. She sneered and said, if you have the guts, why don't you cross the immortal demon abyss and fight him? The surrounding voices suddenly paused. Mo Qing's words poked at everyone's sore spot. The immortals and monks looked very confident, but no one dared to cross the immortal demon abyss rashly and take the initiative to attack Wu Dao's real body. Firstly, Araki Takashi was too fierce after all, and he was also known as the Supreme True Demon. He had caused havoc at the Feast of Peaches and killed people in Langfeng City. This kind of battle record was too shocking. Secondly, if they crossed the immortal demon abyss, it meant that Araki Takashi had the advantage. Moreover, there was Feng Kention, a celestial king. Who would dare to rush over? Chin-su sneered and said, why should we go to the demon area? If Araki Takashi has the guts, he can come to the 9 firmaments immortal region. I still say the same thing. If Araki Takashi dares to take half a step into the 9 firmaments immortal region, I will make his blood splatter on the spot and his corpse be separated from his body. As soon as he finished speaking, Araki Takashi looked at Chiyo Siluo behind him and nodded slightly. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, Araki Takashi rode on the heavenly wolf and took Chiyo Siluo, the Zither demon, across the immortal demon abyss. In the blink of an eye, Araki Takashi had arrived at the 9 firmaments immortal region and was heading toward Chin-su and the others. Araki Takashi really dared to come over. The crowd was shocked. Who wants to make my blood splatter on the spot and my corpse be separated from his body? Wu Dao's real body looked around the crowd with cold eyes, and his aura was oppressive. Except for Junyu, Shi Wunyan, and the other cultivators on the true celestial ranking board, the rest of the people avoided his gaze and did not dare to look at him. Wu Dao's real body's eyes finally stopped on Chin-su. Suddenly, Chin-su felt the pressure increase sharply. An indescribable sense of fear shrouded his head and could not be removed. But at this time, he was already riding a tiger and could not get off. He had just bragged and naturally could not take it back. He could only bite the bullet and say in a deep voice, I said it, you. Before Chin-su could finish his words, Wu Dao's real body had already attacked. This time, there was no warning sign. Wu Dao's real body moved and left the heavenly wolf's back. In an instant he had already arrived in front of Chin-su. Wu Dao's real body did not say a word to Chin-su. He raised his hand and punched. No one could describe the horror of this punch. The speed and strength of this punch had reached the peak. Chin-su's pupils contracted violently and his face changed color in horror. There were many genuine celestials present, and there were even supreme genuine celestials and supreme arhats. But at this moment, he felt that the people around him seemed to have disappeared. He was the only one left facing Wu Dao's real body. In fact, this was exactly the case. Wu Dao's real body suddenly attacked, and the speed was so fast that no one present could react. No one expected that with so many experts around and an immortal king holding down the fort, Desolate Marshal would dare to attack first even though he had come alone. I can't beat him. I can't block him. In an instant, only these two thoughts were left in Chin-su's mind. The punch of Wu Dao's real body made him feel a long-lost aura of death. Even when he was fighting for the genuine celestial board, facing Jun Yu's space-time imprisonment, he did not have such a strong sense of crisis. But Qin Su was extremely decisive. Without thinking, he directly abandoned his physical body. His primordial spirit left his body, wrapped the Dao fruit and an ancient book, and fled into the distance. Bang! Wu Dao's real body smashed Qin Su's physical body into pieces with a punch. The terrifying power of the punch exuded a scorching heat. Before the flesh and blood could reform, it was burned into ashes by the heat of the punch. Just one punch, and Qin Su's physical body was completely destroyed. The power of this punch was not only limited to this. Qin Su's reaction was extremely fast. But just as his primordial spirit left his physical body, Su Zimo's punch came down, and while shattering his physical body, it also enveloped his primordial spirit. This punch seemed to have caused the surrounding void to collapse. No matter how Qin Su struggled, his primordial spirit and Dao fruit could not escape, and could only sink deeper and deeper. Seeing that Qin Su's primordial spirit was about to be destroyed by Wu Dao's real body, the ancient book next to the Dao fruit suddenly bloomed with a bright brilliance, filled with a powerful pressure that was far beyond the genuine celestial realm. A terrifying aura burst out and instantly helped Qin Su escape from the crisis and escape. Araki Takashi, what do you want? I'll give you a chance. Wu Dao's main body said indifferently, since you're called Zither Immortal, then compete with my Zither Devil. If you win, I'll spare your life. Meng Yao glanced at Qiu Siluo and sneered. What Zither Devil? She called herself that, right? What qualifications does she have to compete with me? I forgot to say something. Wu Dao's main body didn't explain and continued, if you don't compete, then I'll kill you. Meng Yao was shocked and angry, and was speechless for a moment. From Araki Takashi's words, it seemed that killing her was as simple as crushing an ant. As one of the four fairies, she had always been the moon surrounded by stars and was pursued by countless cultivators, who didn't treat her with respect when they saw her, afraid that they would be rude. Now, not only was this Araki Takashi of the demon realm rude to her, but he also didn't know how to be gentle with her and kept saying that he wanted to kill her. The most terrifying thing was that this person was unscrupulous and domineering. Meng Yao didn't doubt that if she said no, this Araki Takashi in front of her would kill her without hesitation. Jun Yu and the others frowned, confused. The immortal kings on the peak of Jinmu Mountain also had strange expressions. This Araki Takashi of the demon realm came this time to compete with Meng Yao in Zither skills? Meng Yao was called Zither Immortal, so she was naturally outstanding in Zither Dao. This person actually wanted to compete with Meng Yao in Zither Dao? The Moonlight Sword Immortal chuckled and shook her head slightly. This is ridiculous. A Stage 5 Heavenly Immortal wants to challenge a true Immortal, Meng Yao. Qiu Siluo's cultivation was only a Stage 5 Heavenly Immortal, so there was a huge gap between him and Meng Yao. In the eyes of the crowd, the two of them were on completely different levels. This isn't fair, is it? Mo Qing secretly transmitted her voice to Yunju. She subconsciously sided with Wu Dao and said worriedly, the gap between the two of them is so big. How can the Zither demon win? Yunju pondered and said, if it's just a competition of Zither skills, it doesn't have much to do with cultivation. Alright. After a moment of silence, Meng Yao agreed. Then she sneered and said, since you're asking for it, don't blame me. Meng Yao sat on the ground and placed the Zither on her knees. She looked at Qiu Siluo and said, come, let me see how good you are. As soon as she finished speaking, Meng Yao's fingertips suddenly plucked the strings of the Zither. Clang. It was just a single note, but it emitted a biting cold murderous intent. In an instant, the murderous intent on the battlefield spread, and the surrounding temperature plummeted. Meng Yao's left hand pressed the strings and picked up the notes. She pushed them out, picked them up, and played them simultaneously. She moaned, kicked, bumped, and called. Her right hand plucked the strings, and her finger movements were varied and complicated. She pushed, held, wiped, picked, hooked, plucked, brushed, clang, clang. clang, clang. The sound of the zither was endless, and it became more and more hurried. The immortals and monks under the divine tree of Jianmu felt as if they were on a battlefield, ambushed by thousands of soldiers and horses. Murderous intent was hidden in all directions. Meng Yao's zither music contained a strong murderous intent. If the cultivators closed their eyes, they seemed to be able to feel that there were thousands of soldiers and horses on Meng Yao's zither, charging at them with an earth-shattering aura. The cultivators who were in it felt as if they were about to be trampled by the invisible thousands of soldiers and horses, and cut into pieces by countless sharp blades. Even the bystanders felt it so strongly. Qiu Siluo, who was targeted by Meng Yao, suffered an even greater and more intense impact. Meng Yao's zither music could be elegant and pleasant, but of course, it could also kill. Chapter 2608. Just as the crowd's emotions were gradually stirred up by Meng Yao's zither music, a melodious zither music sounded. The zither deity and zither demon finally faced off. Qiu Siluo's zither music was completely different from Meng Yao's. Meng Yao's zither music was murderous and aggressive. There was no sharpness in Qiu Siluo's zither music, but it contained a trace of recollection, a piece of memory. It was like the warm winter sun, sprinkling in the hearts of the crowd. In terms of zither skills, Meng Yao was indeed better than Qiu Siluo. But because Meng Yao paid too much attention to the rigor and exquisiteness of zither skills, she was tainted with a trace of craftsmanship and less devout in zither Dao. Meng Yao's zither was too utilitarian. She practiced zither for fame, for status, and to make connections. And Qiu Siluo practiced zither only because she liked it. She used the zither to carry the Dao and moved people with her music. Meng Yao's song was just an ice-cold melody. And Qiu Siluo's zither music contained her feelings. In the end, what really touched people's hearts was the touch of deep emotion in the faint zither music. Under the divine tree Jianmu, the immortals and monks were unconsciously immersed in Qiu Siluo's zither music, forgetting where they were for a moment. They unconsciously recalled the past with different expressions. Images flashed through Mo Qing's mind. In Avicii, she was wronged, bullied, and humiliated, but a man in a purple robe with a silver mask suddenly appeared and said something to her. There are people in the world who slander you, bully you, humiliate you, laugh at you, belittle you, despise you, and hate you. You don't have to endure or defend yourself, just kill them. Recalling this, a faint smile appeared on Mo Qing's face. Yunju recalled that in Avicii, there was a handsome scholar who carried her on his back to escape. There were only a few layers of clothes between the two of them, so it was inevitable that there would be some friction as they ran. Yunju lowered her head slightly, and a blush flashed across her cheeks. Shi Wunyan's expression was complicated, and his face was uncertain. The Moonlight Sword Immortal seemed to have recalled something, and her expression was gloomy, and her arms trembled slightly. The perfected immortals and arhats were touched by Qiu Siluo's zither music, and each fell into reminiscence, recalling the most unforgettable scenes in their lives. Some were in tears, some were overjoyed. Some were dejected, while others were pleased with their success. Some were dejected, while others were excited. Sad or happy, sad or resentful, angry or indignant. The 7 emotions and 6 desires were all present. Meng Yao's zither was still playing, but everyone seemed to be unable to hear it. Even Meng Yao herself had sunk into some kind of memory. Her eyes were red and her expression was sorrowful. A bean-sized teardrop fell from the corner of her eye. Patter! This teardrop fell on the sound of her guqin. This voice seemed weak, but it caused Meng Yao to be startled. She couldn't control the strength in her fingers. With a bang, one of the zither strings broke. Her fingertips were cut, and a trace of blood seeped out. This voice also caused the immortals and monks to wake up. Only then did everyone realize what had happened. They were completely immersed in Qiu Sizi's zither song when they were unprepared, and they were infected by the emotions of the zither song. Even his opponent, Meng Yao, was not spared. The outcome of this zither competition had been decided. I actually lost? Meng Yao muttered in disbelief. For a time, she was unable to accept the reality before her. Today's defeat was too big a blow to her. This meant that from now on, she was not worthy of the title of Zither Fairy. All the glory she had once received would vanish. As a peak true immortal, she had lost to a level 5 heaven immortal. This news would spread throughout the heaven realm in a few days. At that time, she would be the laughingstock of the 9 heavens immortal realm. The martial path True Body's move was to defeat Meng Yao in the domain she was most proficient in. This was a devastating blow to Meng Yao's Taoist heart. This was more powerful than directly suppressing her in a head-on battle. Meng Yao sat on the ground in a daze. Her guqin, which had a broken string, fell beside her. Her eyes were blank. Wu Dao's original body jumped down from Skywolf's back. Then he patted Skywolf, indicating that he should carry Qiu Si Luo back to the demon realm. Skywolf had a premonition that Wu Dao's original body was about to make a big move. He was afraid that it would implicate him, so he could not wait to leave as soon as possible. He quickly ran to Qiu Si Luo's side. Junyu looked at Wu Dao's original body with a strong fighting spirit in her eyes. She took off the star chessboard behind her and said in a deep voice, "Araki Takashi from the demon realm, I respect your courage. You dared to cross the abyss of immortals and Arhat lists in the face of the 2 domains geniuses. Now, I'll also give you a chance to have a fair fight with me. The true immortal lists and Arhat lists in the 2 domains." Wu Dao's original body raised his head slightly and looked at the 2 lists hanging high above the divine tree of divine wood. He said lightly, "Your 2 lists are just a joke in my eyes." Before his voice died away, Wu Dao's original body did not do anything. He just raised his hand slightly. Rip. With an ear-piercing sound, the true immortal lists and Arhat lists on the divine tree of divine wood were torn in half by a powerful external force. The 2 lists slowly floated down, and the light emitted by the true immortal names on them gradually dimmed. The crowd was furious. This move could no longer be considered a provocation. It was simply a slap to their faces. He had torn the true immortal lists and Arhat lists in front of them. The 2 lists were just a joke in the eyes of Araki Takashi? This sentence clearly showed that he did not take the geniuses of the 2 domains seriously. The demon is too arrogant. He's too arrogant. Araki Takashi, the blood feud of thousands of true immortals in the Jade Heaven celestial realm must be repaid with blood. The immortals and monks felt their blood boil. Even if they were afraid of Araki Takashi's fierce reputation, they could not care less at this time. Many of them stood up. This time, the Moonlight Sword Immortal was very smart and did not say a word. He vaguely had a premonition. This Araki Takashi of the demon domain had not looked at him from the beginning to the end. However, he still felt a sense of trepidation, as if a disaster would befall him at any time. If not for his reputation, he would have left this place immediately. Wu Dao's true body did not find an excuse to target the Moonlight Sword Immortal, so he was not in a hurry. Chapter 2609. Under Shi Wunyan's instigation, the immortals and monks under the divine tree were all filled with killing intent. They stared at Wu Dao's original body and were ready to attack at any time. With a supreme true immortal and a supreme Arhat in front of them, what were they afraid of? Moreover, there was a group of immortal king experts behind them. If anything happened, the immortal king and heavenly king behind them would definitely not sit idly by. "Demon, why aren't you surrendering?" Shi Wunyan shouted loudly. At the same time, the staff in his hand slammed heavily on the ground, causing a loud bang. This sound resonated with the Buddhist sound domain secret technique that he had released, forming a powerful sound domain attack that shook people's hearts. This was the best sound domain technique of the Buddhist sect, severe warning. If one's cultivation was not good, if they were not prepared, their Tao heart might collapse on the spot. The deeper one's understanding of Buddhism, the greater the power of this sound domain technique. In the previous ranking battle of the Arhat list, Shi Wunyan had used severe warning to directly subdue his opponent, who was also a peak true immortal. Of course, Shi Wunyan had never thought that with this severe warning he would be able to subdue Araki Takashi. However, as long as Araki Takashi revealed a slight flaw, it would be enough. He would take the opportunity to use his most powerful technique and attack Araki Takashi. At that time, the other cultivators would attack together. Each of them would use a secret technique and spirit treasure. No matter how strong Araki Takashi was, he would not be able to withstand it. However, to Shirwunyan's disappointment, Araki Takashi did not seem to have any reaction to his severe warning. The silver mask was cold, and the eyes under the mask were as deep as the ocean and as mysterious as the starry sky. "You're too noisy." Wu Dao's original body glanced at Shirwunyan and said indifferently. No matter how strong Shirwunyan was, he was only a supreme arhat. A Dao technique of this level had no effect on the perfected true Wu Dao body at all. Before he finished speaking, Wu Dao's original body suddenly attacked. He didn't make any extra movements. He just took a step forward and threw a punch in Shirwunyan's direction. This fist was like the eruption of a volcano, raging waves crashing onto the shore. In an instant, it was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was splitting apart. The scene of the destruction of the heavens and the earth appeared. Shirwunyan was shocked. He finally understood why Qin Su, in the face of Araki Takashi's casual punch, was willing to abandon his body and turn around to escape. This punch made him feel suffocated. It shouldn't exist in this world. How could such power be achieved by a mere human? In the blink of an eye, countless thoughts flashed through Shirwunyan's mind. Being enveloped by this punch, he even wanted to turn around and run. But soon he made a decision. He couldn't escape. Qin Su turned and fled. With the Supreme Purity Jade Book and the restriction power left behind by the Sovereign Emperor, he was able to preserve his life. His physical body was abandoned and completely crippled. If he made the same choice, he might not even be able to keep his life. Only by using all of his trump cards without holding back and choosing to resist Araki Takashi's punch and waiting for the other cultivators to arrive would he be able to find a chance to survive. It was not that Shirwunyan did not have a powerful trump card. In the fight for the Arhat ranking, no one could force him to use his full strength and that trump card of his. At that moment, he did not have any other choice. Supreme Divine Power, Dragon Elephant of Buddhas. Shirwunyan placed his palms together and chanted Sanskrit. His entire being turned solemn and inviolable. Although Shirwunyan's Dragon Elephant of Buddhas seemed powerful and terrifying, it should not have reached the level of a true supreme divine power yet. The Dragon Elephant of Buddhas was merely at the threshold of a supreme divine power. Similar to Yun Ting's immortal slaying sword, it was a quasi-supreme divine power. How could a quasi-supreme divine power be in a stalemate with Araki Takashi? Junyu felt that the scene before her was a little strange. As a supreme perfected immortal, she naturally could not be bothered to join forces with others and merely watched coldly from the sidelines with a frown. I see. On the battlefield, the two true bodies that were connected through the spirit potency art deduced at the same time and quickly analyzed the secret of Shirwunyan's Dragon Elephant of Buddhas. Indeed, the Dragon Elephant of Buddhas had the possibility of becoming a supreme divine power. However, in order to raise this divine power to the level of a supreme divine power, one would not only have to have a deep understanding of Buddhism. One would also have to reach an extremely high level in terms of the divine powers and secret skills of the dragons and elephants. The Tao of the Buddhist sects, the Tao of the dragons and the Tao of the elephants were fused together to form the Dragon Elephant of Buddhas. That was a true supreme divine power. Chapter 2610. In Tianhuang mainland, almost all the Buddhas, divine dragons and divine elephants condensed by Monk Daming's Buddha Dragon Elephant were phantoms. However, the divine power of Shirwunyan before him had already condensed into a corporeal form, as though his true body had descended. It was the same for the divine dragons, circling around the Buddhas and riding the clouds. They were no different from true dragons. Although the divine elephants beside the Buddhas looked lifelike, they were not corporeal and were merely phantoms that lacked weight and agility. Su Zimo was certain that Shirwunyan had extremely deep attainments in the Tao techniques of the Buddhist monasteries and dragons and already had a deep understanding of them. However, he did not have a deep understanding of the elephant race's Tao techniques and did not meet the requirements. Therefore, his Tao of all Buddhas and dragon elephants had only touched the threshold of a supreme divine ability. It was not a true supreme divine ability. Su Zimo was delighted after deducing the secret of the Buddha dragon elephant. Qinglian's true body cultivated the forbidden secret of the Buddhist monasteries, the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. There was definitely no problem for her in terms of Buddhist Tao techniques. However, the essence spirit of Qinglian's true body was fused with the dragon phoenix essence spirit to begin with and controlled many divine powers and secret skills of dragons. In terms of comprehension of dragons' Tao techniques, he had even surpassed many true dragons. He had also dabbled in the elephant race's Tao techniques. His innate divine power, the Six Tusks divine power, came from the elephant race. Furthermore, after killing Feng Xian in the emperor's tomb, he obtained a top-tier cultivation technique, the divine elephant breath devouring technique, which contained many elephant race Tao techniques. Back then, Feng Xian relied on that cultivation technique to attract the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascend. He even cultivated the divine elephant bloodline and was extremely strong. After Qinglian's true body obtained that cultivation technique, she cultivated it for many years and comprehended it. In other words, the foundation of his cultivation of the Buddha dragon elephant surpassed even Shi Wunyan, and there was a higher chance that he could cultivate the Buddha dragon elephant into a supreme divine power. In the eyes of others, Shi Wunyan and Araki Takashi were in a stalemate. However, nobody expected that in those few breaths, Su Zimo would attempt to deduce the Buddha dragon elephant's Tao techniques in battle. On the battlefield, Shi Wunyan looked at Wu Dao's clear and bright eyes under the silver mask, and he suddenly felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. He didn't think too much about it and sneered, "The supreme true demon is only SS. Isn't he still restrained by my supreme divine ability? Your Buddhas and dragon elephants have yet to reach the level of a supreme divine ability." Wu Dao's main body said indifferently. "So what?" Shi Wunyan said, "A quasi-supreme ability is enough to stop you. You're too naive." A trace of mockery flashed through the eyes of Wu Dao's main body. Seeing this gaze, Shi Wunyan's heart suddenly felt uneasy. "Everyone, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and join forces to kill this demon." With no time to think, Shi Wunyan growled. At this moment, the voice of Wu Dao's true body suddenly sounded in his mind. "Shi Wunyan, if you want to spar with me in Dharma, do it in your next life." "You are..." Shi Wunyan seemed to have thought of something. His pupils suddenly shrank, and his mind was greatly shocked. He had only said that he wanted to spar with one person. The top of the heaven roll of the divine firmament immortal domain, Su Zimo. In an instant, he seemed to have understood many things. His eyes were filled with horror and fear as he looked at Wu Dao's main body. He opened his mouth wide as if he wanted to shout and say something. Unfortunately, he had no chance. Su Zimo had deduced the secret of the Buddhas and dragon elephants. Shi Wunyan was no longer of any use to him. Wu Dao's main body suddenly exerted strength. The originally silent fist once again burst out with shocking divine power and smashed Shi Wunyan's Buddhas and dragon elephants into pieces. Wu Dao's main body smashed Shi Wunyan's head with a punch. A mist of blood spread, and Shi Wunyan's primordial spirit was destroyed on the spot. The supreme Arhat, Shi Wunyan, was dead. At this time, the immortals and monks under the divine tree of divine tree had already used their divine powers and spiritual treasures and sharp blades, attacking Wu Dao's main body from all directions. Except for Yunju, Mo Qing, and Lin Lei, almost all the perfected immortal Arhats had unleashed their most powerful attacks. The dustless sword swayed with sword shadows, revealing its sharpness. It was filled with pure sword intent, as if it was going to cleanse all the dust in the world. Shurga held a huge dagger axe with both hands and rushed toward Su Zimo. Yun Mubai took out a ninth tribulation pure yang spiritual treasure. A silver-white immortal umbrella with both offensive and defensive capabilities suddenly opened. The sharp edge of the immortal umbrella spun rapidly and slashed towards Wu Dao's main body. The experts on the Arhat list also took out their respective spiritual dharma treasures and unleashed their divine powers and secret techniques, attacking fiercely. Oimani Pa Mi Hum. Many Arhats chanted Buddhist Sanskrit at the same time, forming a vast sound domain's secret technique. They interacted and formed a resonance. The momentum became greater and greater, surging towards Wu Dao's main body. Scram! Wu Dao's main body suddenly opened his mouth and let out an earth-shattering roar in the direction of the Arhats. In an instant, billions of living beings seemed to appear behind Wu Dao's main body. They roared at the immortals and monks present at the same time. It was deafening. Bang, bang, bang. Dozens of cultivators below the divine tree builder could not withstand the impact and were shattered into pieces by a single roar from the martial Dao true body. Their limbs flew everywhere. Some cultivators were killed on the spot, their essence spirits destroyed. One had to know that the cultivators under the divine tree were the top 200 geniuses of the two regions. They were the top perfected immortals. Even so, they could not withstand the impact of the sound domain. A roar had already defeated the attacks of the cultivators and monks. Of course, under the intentional control of Wu Dao's main body, Yunzhu, Mo Qing, and Lin Lei were almost unaffected. Before the attacks of the cultivators landed on Wu Dao's main body, they were on the verge of collapsing. When the dustless sword neared, the sword technique was already faltering and its power was depleted. Wu Dao's main body grabbed the dustless sword and exerted strength in his palm. Snap! There was a crisp sound. The dustless sword was shattered into pieces by the palm of Wu Dao's main body and scattered on the ground. Zhou Wuchen's expression changed in shock. The dustless sword in his hands was a grade 9 pure yang spirit treasure. However, it was broken by Araki Takashi's physical body. What sort of power was that? After breaking the sword, Wu Dao's main body punched in reverse. Zhou Wuchen's eyes widened as he watched the punch fly over. However, he could not dodge it no matter what. Bang! Zhou Wuchen was turned into a blood mist by the punch of Wu Dao's main body. Before he could land on the ground, he was burned to ashes by the heat contained in the fist of Wu Dao's main body and his essence spirit was destroyed. At that moment, the group of Arhats rushed forward as well. Without even looking, Wu Dao's main body punched in reverse. This punch even caused the void to collapse. 5 Arhats were trapped and could not break free. They were enveloped by the fist of Wu Dao's main body. The 5 Arhats were all killed by a single punch of Wu Dao's main body. Under the mysterious divine tree, Wu Dao's main body went on a killing spree. The perfected immortal ranking, Arhat ranking, paragons and monster incarnates were all turned into dead souls under his fist. No one could stop him. Chapter 26:11. The change in the situation was too sudden. Just a moment ago, Araki Takashi and Shi Wunyan were evenly matched. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, Shi Wunyan would be killed by Araki Takashi with a single punch? Shi Wunyan was defeated too quickly and too suddenly. The immortal kings on the peak of Jianmu Mountain could not react for a moment. The heavenly kings of the Pure Lands were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They were both shocked and furious. Shi Wunyan came from Mount Meru of the Pure Lands. He was the #1 person in this batch of Buddhist sects and had just been conferred the title of Supreme Arhat. Who would have thought that on the second day after Shi Wunyan obtained the title of Supreme Arhat, he would be killed by Araki Takashi on the spot. Shi Wunyan would probably become the fastest Supreme Arhat to fall since ancient times. By the time the heavenly kings came back to their senses, the battle had already begun. Wu Dao's true body attacked continuously. None of the perfected immortal prodigies of the two regions were a match for him. Blood flowed like a river under the divine tree of Jianmu. One had to know that the 200 perfected immortals and Arhats who could cultivate under the divine tree of Jianmu could be considered the future, foundation, and hope of the two regions. They were the most outstanding successors of the various sects and factions. Seeing these prodigies die one after another, the immortal kings and heavenly kings of the various sects and factions could no longer sit still. No matter what, they had to save their successors first. If they allowed Araki Takashi to continue like this, not many of the 200 perfected immortals would survive. The peerless immortal kings of the two regions could still remain calm. It was enough for an ordinary immortal king to step in. If they needed a peerless immortal king to deal with a supreme true demon, it would be too much of a fuss. Wu Dao's true body was about to take advantage of the chaos to kill the Moonlight Sword Immortal in the crowd, but 3 immortal kings and 4 heavenly kings descended and blocked his path. 7 Grotto Heaven Realm experts arrived on the battlefield and emitted a powerful divine sense pressure, directly locking onto Wu Dao's true body. Demon, stop what you're doing. The sea of blood is boundless. Turn back and be saved. Lay down your butcher's knife and become a Buddha on the spot. A Buddhist heavenly king chanted in Sanskrit. At the same time, he raised his wooden mallet and slammed it heavily on the wooden fish in his hand, producing a heart-stirring sound. The other 2 immortal kings also stretched out their palms, pressing down on Wu Dao's true body. In the face of the attacks of the Grotto Heaven Realm powerhouses, Wu Dao's original body actually advanced instead of retreating. With a cold snort, he raised 2 fists and collided with the palms of the 2 celestial kings. Seeing this, the cultivators felt a sense of absurdity in their hearts. It was unknown if this Araki Takashi from the Devil Domain was a madman, or if his mind was muddled. He actually dared to go head-on against an immortal king with his bare hands. Wasn't this courting death? Bang, bang. The speed at which the 2 celestial kings attacked was very fast, but their speed of retreat was even faster. In the blink of an eye, the 2 celestial kings were sent flying by Wu Dao's original body with 2 punches. The 2 celestial kings' faces were filled with shock. They only felt that the moment they collided with Wu Dao's original body, they felt a destructive divine power crazily surging into their bodies. The 2 of them could not withstand it at all. Kakaka. A sharp pain came from the arms of the 2 celestial kings as the sound of bones cracking rang out. Under countless gazes, the flesh and blood on the arms of the 2 celestial kings were torn apart. Their bones broke into pieces and a cloud of blood mist burst out. Their internal organs were also shaken by the violent impact. They coughed out large mouthfuls of blood and their expressions were dispirited. The crowd sucked in a breath of cold air and turned pale with fright. Celestial kings condensed their grotto heavens. When they cultivated, they used their grotto heavens to nourish their bodies and bloodlines. Their physiques were powerful and their strength was astonishing, far surpassing that of the true One Realm. And now, the 2 celestial kings were actually severely injured by 2 punches from a true demon in close combat. What kind of power was this? Just what level had this Araki Takashi reached? The remaining celestial king and the 4 heavenly kings were also shocked by the scene just now. The 5 Grotto Heaven Realm experts tacitly activated their small grotto heavens without hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. The 5 Grotto Heaven Realm experts released their respective small grotto heavens. They did not dare to hold back at all as they pushed their immortal king battle prowess to the peak. Araki Takashi of the Demon Realm was troublesome and terrifying. It had already exceeded their imagination. They did not want to suffer a huge setback at the hands of Araki Takashi in front of the crowd. Wu Dao's original body looked at the Celestial King and the 4 heavenly kings with a cold gaze. His entire body was filled with a chilling aura that made one's heart palpitate. Immediately after, Wu Dao's original body circulated his qi and blood. An earth-shattering sound of a tsunami came from his body as his aura skyrocketed. 2 balls of purple flames ignited in his eyes. They were deep and bright, and could not be looked at directly. In the next moment, Wu Dao's original body faced the 5 celestial kings. He took another step forward and punched out. This punch enveloped the celestial king and the 4 heavenly kings. It exploded like fire and surged like the sea. This punch looked simple, but it condensed all of Wu Dao's Dao techniques and will. Unyielding, resistance. Straight to the heart, quick to repay kindness and hatred. This was a simple punch without any unnecessary movements. The great Dao was simple. His original body's fist was Wu Dao. All of the Dao techniques and power in the perfected true Wu Dao's body were condensed into this punch. Boom. The fist of Wu Dao's original body collided with the 5 grotto heavens opposite him. The surrounding void trembled. Then, the eyes of the Celestial King and the 4 heavenly kings gradually changed. The 5 of them looked at Wu Dao's original body as if they had seen a god. They were shocked and afraid. Rumble. Under everyone's gaze, The grotto heavens that the 5 of them had just propped up were destroyed by Wu Dao's original body with a single punch. They collapsed and turned into nothingness. All the cultivators widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. This scene had already exceeded the understanding of the cultivators. The power of the supreme true demon could already surpass the true self realm and the grotto heaven realm to reach such a terrifying level? Even the peerless celestial kings on the peak of Genmu Mountain subconsciously stood up, their hearts trembling. With their eyesight, they could naturally tell that Araki Takashi's punch just now did not involve the power of the grotto heavens at all. In other words, Araki Takashi of the demon domain had yet to step into the grotto heaven realm. That punch was purely based on the power of his physical body and bloodline. Even so, it was already so terrifying. Although the Celestial King and the 4 Heavenly Kings were only at the initial stage of the grotto heaven realm and had only condensed a small grotto heaven was still a grotto heaven. How could the most powerful attack of an immortal king be destroyed by a single punch? Even if it was them, it would be difficult for them to do so without releasing their large grotto heavens. The 5 small grotto heavens collapsed. The Celestial King and the 4 Heavenly Kings were shocked. They did not dare to block in front of Wu Dao's original body and hurriedly retreated to avoid the attack. The 7 grotto heaven realm experts had just rushed forward when they were scattered by Wu Dao's original body with a few punches. Once the 7 celestial kings retreated, the perfected immortal elites under the divine tree were once again exposed to Wu Dao's original body. Wu Dao's original body's gaze turned and landed on the Moonlight Sword Immortal. In an instant, the Moonlight Sword Immortal felt all the hair on her body stand on end and her scalp go numb. She seemed to have lost control of her body. She had been targeted. Chapter 26:12. The Moonlight Sword Immortal felt very innocent. Under the instigation of Shi Wunyan, Zhuo Wuchen, and the others, more than half of the cultivators under the divine tree attacked Wu Dao's real body. There were only a few cultivators who did not make a move, and he was one of them. Yunju and Mo Qing knew Wu Dao's real body, so they naturally did not make a move. As a supreme perfected immortal, Junyu was too embarrassed to join forces with others, so she did not make a move. The reason why the Moonlight Sword Immortal did not make a move was simple. This was because he had a sudden feeling that a great disaster was about to befall him. Moreover, he did not know why, but he had a feeling that Araki Takashi from the demon domain wanted to make an example out of him. The Moonlight Sword Immortal did not make a move because he was afraid that he would give Araki Takashi a reason to attack. However, he did not expect that although he had been honest and did not lay a finger on Araki Takashi and had no enmity with Araki Takashi, he was still targeted in the end. The Moonlight Sword Immortal was puzzled and indignant. Just now, Araki Takashi's demonic power was so strong that even a Grotto Heaven Realm Immortal King was defeated. What was he, who was 9th on the perfected immortal leaderboard? Araki Takashi could probably crush him to death with just a finger. The Moonlight Sword Immortal did not have the heart to resist and turned to flee without thinking. At the same time, he shouted for help in the direction of the Divine Tree Mountain. Trying to escape? Wu Dao's real body sneered and sped toward the Moonlight Sword Immortal at an extremely fast speed. No one dared to stop him wherever he passed. At this moment, a figure flashed in front of him, as if carrying the vast starry sky, mysterious and unfathomable. The Supreme Perfected Immortal, Junyu, had appeared. She was unwilling to join forces with others to deal with Wu Dao's real body. She was the only one who dared to stand out and block the path of Wu Dao's real body. Seeing this scene, Mo Qing was shocked and worried about Junyu's safety. After all, in her opinion, Araki Takashi did things without any scruples and was from the demon domain. He was decisive in killing. Even an immortal king would be defeated by him, let alone Junyu. Don't worry. At that moment, Yunju's voice rang in Mo Qing's mind. She said with certainty, Junyu will be fine. Yunju knew the identity of Wu Dao's original body. Therefore, she was certain that Wu Dao's original body would never harm Junyu. Seeing Junyu blocking his path, Wu Dao's footsteps paused slightly. He said indifferently, "You are not my opponent." Before his voice fell, Wu Dao's main body had already attacked. Different from the previous attacks, this time, Wu Dao's original body did not unleash any heaven-destroying and earth-extinguishing punch. He only pressed two fingers together, forming the shape of a sword finger, and pierced towards Jun Yu's forehead. Before the sword finger arrived, Jun Yu felt the space between her eyebrows swell slightly and a sharp pain came from it. Very strong indeed, Jun Yu thought to herself. Facing Araki Takashi, she didn't dare to hold back. She formed a seal with both hands and gently pointed in the direction of Wu Dao's original body, shouting in a low voice, "Space-time imprisonment." Jun Yu didn't hold back and released this supreme divine ability. A powerful and mysterious force instantly descended. Everything in this space couldn't move, nor could they feel the passage of time. The air around Wu Dao's original body seemed to have quietened down in an instant. But soon, the perfected real body of Wu Dao bloomed with a purple halo, flickering with countless mysterious runes. Wu Dao's original body instantly broke free from the space-time imprisonment. To be precise, this couldn't be considered breaking free. This supreme divine ability almost didn't have any effect on Wu Dao's original body. The entire situation was like a game of chess. Jun Yu's move was wrong and she was at a disadvantage. Wu Dao's original body had already arrived in front of Jun Yu. His sword finger was hanging between her eyebrows, ready to swallow and spit out sword chi at any time, bursting with killing intent. Jun Yu's body moved and took a step back diagonally. Her movement technique was strange and incomparably mysterious. Immortal King Ling Long's 9 Palace Subtle Steps. The 9 Palaces' subtle steps wasn't known for its speed, but in battle, it could often be used to find a way out of death. Jun Yu released the 9 Palaces' subtle steps, planning to temporarily pull away from Wu Dao's original body before making plans. But at the same time that Jun Yu dodged diagonally behind, Wu Dao's original body moved, as if breaking through layers of the void, and actually followed. The two of them were practically one in front and one behind. The distance between them didn't pull apart at all. Wu Dao's original body's sword finger was still hanging between Jun Yu's eyebrows. Jun Yu's heart skipped a beat. She hurriedly released the 9 Palaces' subtle steps again, wanting to shake off Wu Dao's original body's pursuit. But Wu Dao's original body followed suit, like a shadow. How is this possible? Jun Yu was alarmed. Araki Takashi could actually break the 9 Palaces' subtle steps and even follow her. I've said before, you're not my match. Wu Dao's original body emphasized again. With a move, he chased in the direction of the Moonlight Sword Immortal. Don't go, the outcome hasn't been decided yet. Jun Yu took a step forward, wanting to call out to Wu Dao's original body. But suddenly, she felt a trace of warmth gradually flowing down from between her eyebrows. Jun Yu touched it subconsciously. Her hand was covered in blood. Her glabella had been pierced through. In other words, if Araki Takashi of the Fiend region had moved his sword finger an inch forward, sword chi would have pierced through her essence spirit. But Araki Takashi had just started a massacre. Why didn't he kill me? Jun Yu could vaguely sense that Araki Takashi's treatment of her was somewhat different. At the very least, he didn't unleash an overly ferocious and terrifying attack. Instead, he left some leeway. A sense of helplessness suddenly rose in Jun Yu's heart. The difference between the two of them was too great. In front of Araki Takashi of the Fiend region, even her fighting spirit and fighting spirit were severely suppressed. She couldn't even raise her head. Although there was a slight delay, Wu Dao's original body was extremely fast. Just as the Moonlight Sword Immortal was about to reach the Jianmu mountain range, he caught up with her. Wu Dao's original body didn't say anything. He raised his hand and punched out. All of a sudden, a crack appeared in the void beside the Moonlight Sword Immortal, and a white-haired elder flashed out. He glared at Wu Dao's original body and shouted, "Demon, how dare you hurt my academy's disciple?" The Grand Elder of Qiankuan Academy had arrived. Although the Grand Elder of Qiankuan Academy was old, he was still at the Grotto Heaven realm after all. He was a peerless immortal king. Seeing that ordinary immortal kings couldn't stop Wu Dao's original body at all, The Grand Elder of Qianquan Academy couldn't sit still and had to step forward personally. No matter what, the Moonlight Sword Immortal was the #1 true disciple of Qianquan Academy. He couldn't afford to lose her. The Grand Elder of Qianquan Academy stretched out his slightly skinny hand and clenched it into a fist. He activated his bloodline and collided with the fist of Wu Dao's original body. Bang! The two fists collided, and the sound of defeat could be heard. Neither of them retreated half a step. Wu Dao's original body looked at the Moonlight Sword Immortal, who was frantically fleeing toward the peak of the Jianmu Mountain, and a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. He activated his essence spirit and activated his divine ability, pointing at the Moonlight Sword Immortal from afar. Eternal damnation! A supreme divine ability erupted. Wu Dao's original body rarely used divine abilities or secret techniques in battle. It wasn't that he didn't know how to use them. It was just that most of the time, he didn't need to use any divine abilities or secret techniques. His divine abilities and secret techniques had already been integrated into the body of the real Wu Dao. At this moment, Wu Dao's original body had just used a divine ability and directly released a supreme divine ability, causing a series of exclamations. The Moonlight Sword Immortal turned back and looked. She was so scared that her face turned pale, and despair filled her heart. With her strength, she couldn't withstand a supreme divine ability at all. Moreover, this eternal damnation was even more terrifying than space-time imprisonment in terms of killing power. The Grand Elder of Qianquan Academy was held back by Wu Dao's original body and couldn't get away for a moment. He could only wave his sleeves and throw out a powerful secret technique, which crashed toward eternal damnation. Chapter 26:13. Eternal damnation originated from the last tribulation of the 99 heavenly tribulations. The myriad heavenly tribulations transformed into countless runes that emitted a destructive aura. They descended densely, covering the sky and the sun. Tribulation of formation, tribulation of stopping, tribulation of destruction, tribulation of void, tribulation of fire, tribulation of water, tribulation of wind, tribulation of weapons. Every tribulation evolved into countless smaller tribulations. The 3 calamities, 9 disasters, and 10 evil tribulations were like a tide of heavenly tribulations, surging toward the Moonlight Sword Immortal to devour him. In an instant, an apocalyptic scene appeared above the Moonlight Sword Immortal's head. Amidst the tide of heavenly tribulations, the Moonlight Sword Immortal trembled slightly, appearing extremely small and insignificant. The true essence radiance on his body had already been torn to shreds. The Moonlight Sword Immortal withstood the pressure, his eyes bloodshot. As if his life depended on it, he activated his Dao Fruit Primordial Spirit, condensed his true essence, and continuously released divine powers and mystic techniques. However, his divine powers and mystic techniques surged into the tide of heavenly tribulations like a stone ox entering the sea. They did not stir up any waves and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the face of supreme divine powers, all his counterattacks were insignificant. At this moment, the Academy Grand Elder's mystic technique descended. A huge hand appeared above the Moonlight Sword Immortal's head, holding back the surging tide of heavenly tribulations. Although supreme divine powers were powerful, Wu Dao's original body was limited by his cultivation realm. Eternal damnation could not harm a peerless immortal king like the Academy Grand Elder at all. However, the tide of heavenly tribulations kept surging, wanting to flow through the gaps between the fingers of the huge hand and continue to threaten the Moonlight Sword Immortal. Umph! The Academy Grand Elder snorted coldly. The huge hand suddenly exerted force and clenched into a fist. Boom! The tide of heavenly tribulations suddenly exploded, and a loud sound came from midair. The huge hand grabbed, and the terrifying power of a peerless immortal king directly destroyed the power of eternal damnation. The Moonlight Sword Immortal was right beside the huge hand and eternal damnation. The two powers collided, and the remaining power surged, forming a storm that instantly engulfed him. Ah! The Moonlight Sword Immortal screamed. Although eternal damnation was destroyed by the Academy Grand Elder, there were still many damaged heavenly tribulations, damaged runes, and supreme divine powers left behind. Such Tao was of course no threat to immortal kings. However, the Moonlight Sword Immortal was only a true immortal. She could not withstand it at all. If the first elder of the Academy had not chosen to clash with damnation of eternity and had only blocked it, the Moonlight Sword Immortal would still have had a chance to escape. The Grand Elder of the Academy chose to clash head-on with the supreme divine ability. The aftershock of the attack spread, and the Moonlight Sword Immortal didn't even have time to escape. In the blink of an eye, wounds appeared on the Moonlight Sword Immortal's body. Some were so deep that her bones could be seen, and some even revealed her internal organs. It was a ghastly sight. Worst of all, one of the Moonlight Sword Immortal's arms had been chopped off by a broken weapon tribulation rune. The Moonlight Sword Immortal fell to the ground, her body twitching uncontrollably as she let out a shrill cry. Her body was covered in blood and she was almost unrecognizable. When the great elder of the Academy saw the tragic state that the Moonlight Sword Immortal was in, his expression changed. He immediately propped up his grotto heaven and repelled Wu Dao's original body. In an instant, he appeared beside the Moonlight Sword Immortal. The Grand Elder of the Academy took out a few immortal pills and fed them to the Moonlight Sword Immortal. Then, he conjured a series of incantations and released several healing mystic arts on the Moonlight Sword Immortal. It hurts. After a few healing mystic arts, the Moonlight Sword Immortal's cries became even more tragic. Her entire body was convulsing, and the injuries on her body showed no signs of healing. No one knew if it was the effect of the immortal pills or the Grand Elder's healing mystic arts, but the Moonlight Sword Immortal seemed to have regained a brief moment of consciousness. She looked at the Grand Elder of the Academy with a pleading expression. "It's too painful. Quick, kill me. Give me a quick death." The Moonlight Sword Immortal's voice was trembling slightly. Looking at the Moonlight Sword Immortal at the foot of the mountain and hearing her horrifying cries, the cultivators gasped and shuddered. Beyond redemption. It's too scary. Once one is hit by this supreme divine power, no injuries can be healed. At this rate, the Moonlight Sword Immortal will not be able to hold on for long. She will be tortured to death by her own injuries. One of the three great sword immortals of the divine firmament's celestial realm, ranked 9th on the perfected immortal leaderboard. To think that she would end up like this today. When the immortals and monks saw this scene, their hearts were filled with emotions and they sighed endlessly. Originally, everyone was still feeling sorry for Shi Wunyan and the others when they saw Araki Takashi kill them with a single punch. But now, compared to the Moonlight Sword Immortal, Shi Wunyan and the others died without any pain. They were considered lucky. Another person sighed. If I had known this would happen, the Moonlight Sword Immortal would not have escaped just now. She was killed by Araki Takashi with a single punch so that she would not have to suffer such pain and torture. Although Mo Qing had been dissatisfied with the Moonlight Sword Immortal for a long time, she could not help but shake her head and sigh when she saw him in such a miserable state. The Moonlight Sword Immortal had once said in front of her, "If Araki Takashi dares to appear before me, I will definitely cut off his facade and shatter his legend with a single sword." This sentence seemed to have been said just yesterday. Thinking back to that scene, it seemed somewhat ironic. Perhaps even the Moonlight Sword Immortal himself did not expect that he would really meet Araki Takashi and end up in such a state. There were many cultivators present, but apart from Yunju, probably no one else knew why Araki Takashi would look for the Moonlight Sword Immortal. The Moonlight Sword Immortal had targeted Su Zimo many times and even joined forces with outsiders to trap and kill him. If he killed the Moonlight Sword Immortal directly, it would be too easy for him. Only by letting him die in pain and torture could it be considered a punishment for him. Over at the Green Firmament Immortal Domain, Lin Luo looked at the Moonlight Sword Immortal, who was covered in blood and screaming in pain, and frowned slightly. "Mother, is there no way to resolve this Tao of eternal damnation?" Lin Luo asked. Immortal King Ling Long said, "Of course there is, but it is very difficult, unless this moonlight can comprehend the mysteries of the Grotto Heaven realm on her own and become an immortal king." Looking at his current situation, it will be difficult for him to survive, let alone try to step into the grotto heaven realm. Lin Luo asked again, after all, eternal damnation is only a supreme mystical power. Could it be that even an immortal king is unable to suppress this power? Of course. Immortal King Ling Long said, any immortal king present can expel eternal damnation as long as they use their grotto heaven. But at the same time, Moonlight will not be able to save his life. He will be crushed to death by the power of the grotto heaven. The Tao of eternal damnation had already fused into every inch of the Moonlight Sword Immortal's wounds. If his essence spirit wanted to escape, it would be attacked by the power of eternal damnation. Removing eternal damnation from his body meant that even his physical body, bloodline, and even his essence spirit would be completely suppressed and crushed. After pausing for a moment, Immortal King Ling Long changed the topic and said, however, nothing is absolute. If there is an immortal king's grotto heaven that condenses endless vitality, it might be able to help him resolve eternal damnation and save his life. However, there are very few such immortal kings. At least in the heaven realm, I have never heard of an immortal king possessing such a grotto heaven. Chapter 26:14. The Grand Elder of the Academy looked at the Moonlight Sword Immortal, who was in pain. He was struggling and hesitating. He slowly raised his palm, but it was suspended in midair, unable to land. Killing the Moonlight Sword Immortal and giving him a quick death, so that he could avoid the pain and torture of eternal damnation. To him, this might be the best outcome. However, the Moonlight Sword Immortal was the #1 disciple of the Academy after all. The Grand Elder really couldn't do it. Moonlight, I'll send you back to the Academy. Perhaps the Patriarch can save your life. As for, the Grand Elder of the Academy wanted to say something but stopped. He didn't want to deal another blow to the Moonlight Sword Immortal. Even if the Patriarch of the Academy could save the Moonlight Sword Immortal's life, the Moonlight Sword Immortal would probably be crippled. Not to mention stepping into the grotto heaven realm and becoming an immortal king, the Moonlight Sword Immortal would probably be inferior to many of the true disciples in the future. Moreover, this blow would have a huge impact on the Moonlight Sword Immortal. From today onwards, the name of the Moonlight Sword Immortal would be completely destroyed in the Divine Firmament Immortal realm and even the entire heaven realm. The Grand Elder of the Academy sighed softly. He tore through the void with the Moonlight Sword Immortal and returned to the Chenkuan Academy. Other than him, there were more than 100 ordinary immortal kings and more than 20 peerless immortal kings watching. Araki Takashi from the demon realm couldn't escape at all. To the Grand Elder of the Academy, saving the Moonlight Sword Immortal was more important. On the Green Firmament Immortal realm side, although Immortal King Ling Long was still sitting far away, her upper body was slightly straightened. Her expression was solemn and rather nervous. Su Zimo, if you want to suppress the Zither Immortal this time, you have already achieved your goal. You should leave as soon as possible. Immortal King Ling Long sent a voice transmission to Qinglian's true body in the Divine Firmament Immortal realm, secretly reminding her. There's no hurry. Su Zimo sent a voice transmission. Immortal King Ling Long frowned slightly and reminded him again, you have to be clear that now that you have injured and forced back an ordinary immortal king, the peerless immortal kings present can no longer sit still. You just fought with the Grand Elder of the Academy. You should know that there is a huge difference in strength between an ordinary immortal king and a peerless immortal king. From what I can see, you did not gain the upper hand in your fight with the first Elder of the Academy. In fact, you might even be at a disadvantage. Su Zimo transmitted, that is indeed the case. The strength of Wu Dao's true body is not enough to fight against a peerless immortal king. There's one more thing. Immortal King Ling Long continued. The situation here is different from the Jade Firmament Immortal Realm's Lang Feng City. There are no immortal kings there. You can use the Hell-Suppressing Cauldron to leave at any time. But at this moment, all the supreme immortal kings here can no longer sit still. If these people join forces and seal the void, even if you take out the Hell-Suppressing Cauldron and break through the void, you won't be able to leave this place. Sealing the void was a technique used by immortal kings. Immortal King Ling Long was afraid that Su Zimo did not know the pros and cons of the situation, so she reminded him. Since immortal kings could break through the void, they naturally could join forces to seal the void, preventing other immortal kings from casually leaving. Once the 20 or so peerless immortal kings made their moves and sealed the void, even immortal King Ling Long wouldn't be able to escape with Wu Dao's true body. At that time, probably no one would be able to save Wu Dao's true body. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he said, "Thank you for your reminder, Senior Ling Long. If these peerless immortal kings join forces and seal the void, it would be best. I was afraid that they would have scruples and wouldn't dare to attack Wu Dao's true body." Immortal King Ling Long was smart. She could vaguely tell that Su Zimo seemed to have other intentions in his words. However, she couldn't figure it out at the moment. She said helplessly, "You're so powerful. You killed 2 immortal kings and even injured a few immortal kings. Even if they have scruples, they won't sit back and let you do whatever you want. Be careful." Immortal King Ling Long reminded again. On the battlefield, Wu Dao's true body watched the Grand Elder of the Academy take the Moonlight Sword Immortal away and didn't stop him. His heart skipped a beat as he sensed the movement behind him. His expression couldn't help but turn cold. Wu Dao's true body released his divine sense and gathered the Dao spells that were left in the void in the distance into his palm. They turned into a dark red light. Then, he retreated rapidly and sped toward the abyss of immortals and demons. After the battle between the Zither Immortal and the Zither Demon, Sky Wolf obeyed the order of Wu Dao's true body and carried Qiu Siluo toward the demon's realm. Then, under the divine tree of Zhenmu, a great battle broke out. Wu Dao's true body went on a killing spree. Out of curiosity, Sky Wolf looked back as he walked toward the abyss of immortals and demons. He slowed down a little. Just as Wu Dao's true body was fighting with the Grand Elder of the Academy, Zither Immortal Mengyao, who was sitting on the ground in a daze, suddenly came to her senses. It was as if she had regained consciousness in an instant. She suddenly raised her head and looked at Qiu Siluo in the distance. Her eyes were filled with deep jealousy. Mengyao moved and chased after Qiu Siluo. Her expression was cold and murderous. Sky Wolf was shocked when he saw Mengyao chasing after him. He quickly ran toward the abyss of immortals and demons. But he and Qiu Siluo were only fairy immortals. In terms of running away, they were no match for Mengyao, who was at the peak of the genuine immortal realm. Just as he was about to reach the abyss of immortals and demons, Mengyao caught up with him. "Your Zither skills are no match for mine." Mengyao looked at Qiu Siluo on Sky Wolf's back. Her heart was filled with endless unwillingness. She screamed, "You defeated me only because of the soul-attracting Zither. This Zither should have been my lucky chance. As long as I kill you and take back the soul-attracting Zither, I will still be the Zither Immortal and one of the 4 fairies." There was no fear on Qiu Siluo's face. She looked at Mengyao with a trace of pity. "Do you really think that your defeat is only because of an external object?" Qiu Siluo asked softly. This sentence was like a sharp blade that stabbed into Mengyao's chest. She trembled. Just as Qiu Siluo said, deep in her heart, she clearly knew the reason for her defeat. She blamed it all on the soul-attracting Zither, but she did not want to face it. "I don't care." Mengyao gritted her teeth and said, "I want to take back what is mine." The things that Mengyao was talking about were not only the soul-attracting Zither, but also all the glory and fame that she had once obtained. "Die." Mengyao activated her Dao fruit. Halos of light spread out behind her head. Her divine sense condensed and burst out a primordial spirit secret technique at Qiu Siluo. At this moment, a figure suddenly flashed and blocked in front of Mengyao. Her primordial spirit secret technique collided with the silver mask on the figure's face. It seemed to ripple and then disappeared. Wu Dao's true body had arrived. "You." When Mengyao saw the silver mask and looked at the pair of eyes burning with purple flames behind the silver mask, her expression changed drastically. She was so scared that she could not speak. Wu Dao's true body was expressionless. He raised his hand and slapped Mengyao. A scarlet light flashed in his palm and disappeared into Mengyao's cheek. This was the remnant of eternal damnation. Chapter 26:15. Slap. The slap from Wu Dao's true body sent Meng Yao flying more than 100 feet away. Meng Yao had thought that she was dead for sure. After all, she had just seen the means of Wu Dao's true body. He could even kill Shi Wunyan with one punch. The small grotto heaven formed by the immortal king was shattered. No matter how hard her head was, it could not withstand the power of Araki Takashi's palm. But after she was sent flying, she only felt her ears buzzing and her vision was a little dazed. She calmed down a little and sat up. She was not dead? A devil like Araki Takashi actually knew how to be gentle with a woman? For a moment, Meng Yao's thoughts were in a mess. However, she soon discovered the abnormality. Many of the surrounding cultivators looked at her strangely, with a hint of fear and pity in their eyes. Some cultivators were even unwilling to look at her and avoided her gaze. Just at this moment, Meng Yao felt a tearing pain on her face. She subconsciously touched it and her palm was covered in blood. This kind of superficial wound had no effect on a perfected immortal. Meng Yao activated her primordial spirit Dao fruit and circulated her bloodline, trying to heal the wound on her cheek. But soon she discovered that the wound on her face could not heal. Even if she consumed a lot of spirit pills and miraculous medicines, there was no sign of recovery. Although the bleeding from the wound had temporarily stopped, there was a hideous and terrifying scar on her cheek. Bright red flesh was exposed, completely tearing her originally beautiful face apart. No matter who saw such a face, they would not associate it with the four fairies. They would only feel fear. At this moment, Meng Yao finally understood why the surrounding cultivators were looking at her with such strange eyes. She could become one of the four fairies because of two things. First, it was her superb zither skills. Second, it was her devastatingly beautiful face. This was also the reason for her pride. And now, Araki Takashi of the demon realm had appeared and destroyed the two things that she valued the most. The crowd knew that Araki Takashi's method was even more terrifying than directly killing zither immortal Meng Yao. To Meng Yao, this outcome was simply worse than death. In reality, after being attacked by the Academy's chief elder's mystic technique and then being absorbed by the Moonlight Sword Immortal, there was not much Dao power left. Even so, it still left a scar on Meng Yao's face that couldn't be healed. You destroyed me. But why are you so cruel to me? We have no grudge against each other. Meng Yao's hair was disheveled as she sat on the ground. She seemed to have lost her soul. This was a huge blow to her. Wu Dao's true body had even completely snuffed out any chance she had of making a comeback. Her beauty and zither Dao that she relied on had all been crippled by Wu Dao's true self. Today, she had lost all face and her former glory had also vanished. In less than half a day, she fell from the high and mighty altar into a bottomless abyss where the sun could not be seen. At this moment, Thunder Emperor of Heaven's wrath saw that Qiu Siluo was in danger and rushed over. However, by the time he arrived, Wu Dao's true body had already dealt with Meng Yao. Zimo, let's go. Today's matter is over. Feng Cantillon looked at the group of immortal kings opposite him and felt a little uneasy. Although he was fearless, he did not want to die here in a daze. In the future, he still wanted to kill his way back to the divine firmament immortal realm and take revenge on Monarch Jin and the crown prince of the state of Jin. Brother Feng, you take them back first. Wu Dao's true body's tone was calm, as if he did not sense the danger at all. Let's go together. Feng Cantillon insisted. Wu Dao's true body said, take Sky Wolf and Qiu Siluo back to the other side first. Remember, no matter what you see later, don't attack. You. Feng Cantillon could tell that Wu Dao's true body seemed to have a deeper meaning in his words. He did not ask in detail. He just nodded and took Sky Wolf and Qiu Siluo back to the demon realm. Patriarch is still not back? Gu Tongyo's eyes were gloomy and a little worried. Feng Kenon pondered for a moment and said, Patriarch should have other plans. Let's wait and see. Don't act rashly. Under the divine tree, the top 200 perfected immortal geniuses of the Nine Heavens immortal realm and the Pure Lands had already taken this opportunity to escape. There were only a few people left, among which were the three fairies, book immortal Yun Zhu, painting immortal Mo Qing, and chess immortal Junyu. Wu Dao's true body walked slowly toward the divine tree. The group of immortal kings was secretly shocked. They tore the void and blocked in front of Wu Dao's true body. They were on guard and nervous. The scene just now was witnessed by all the immortal kings. Wu Dao's true body had shattered the small grotto heavens of 5 immortal kings with a punch. How far had Araki Takashi cultivated? The immortal kings could not see the aura of a grotto heaven realm on Araki Takashi's body. However, the power he unleashed was even stronger than the ordinary immortal kings. On the peak of Jianmu Mountain, more than 20 peerless immortal kings looked at each other and slowly stood up. They emitted a huge pressure that surged over. Immortal King Ling Long glanced sideways at Su Zimo of the Divine Firmament Immortal Realm. At that moment, Su Zimo's expression was calm, as if he still did not feel the danger. If you want to leave, this is your last chance. Immortal King Ling Long hesitated for a moment, but she could not help but send a voice transmission to remind him. She could not deduce anything about Wu Dao's true body, nor could she guess the intentions of Wu Dao's true body. Senior, don't worry. Su Zimo's voice was calm, and he did not explain further. Wu Dao's true body looked at the 20 peerless immortal kings on the peak of Jianmu Mountain and suddenly said, "What's wrong? Are the peerless immortal kings of the 2 regions ready to fight?" Qin Su, the crown prince of the Supreme Firmament Immortal Realm, had been crippled. The everlasting Night Immortal King was furious. At that moment, he looked gloomy and said slowly, "Araki Takashi, you came to the continent of the 9 Clouds meeting and acted atrociously. If we let you leave alive, we will lose face." "That's right." Immortal King Qin Yang said loudly, "You call yourself the Supreme True Demon, but in fact, you can already defeat a Grotto Heaven Immortal King. We are not bullying you. Araki Takashi, you don't have to try to escape from here." Immortal King Qi Ping smiled coldly and said, "I don't mind telling you that we have sealed the void here. Even if you take out the prison suppressing cauldron, you won't be able to escape to Avicii." Amitabha. Heavenly King Luo Shi of the Pure Land of Bliss put his palms together and said softly, "Araki Takashi, your prison suppressing cauldron is a sacred item of our Buddhist sect. Today, it's time to return it to its rightful owner." The prison suppressing cauldron was the great Emperor Wu Ji's great imperial weapon. It was related to Avicii. Even the celestial kings of the 9 Clouds Immortal Realm wanted it for themselves, let alone the heavenly kings of the Pure Land of Bliss. Moreover, when they saw Wu Dao's true body explode with such terrifying strength, the celestial kings' imaginations ran wild. They thought it had something to do with Avicii. Alright. Wu Dao's true body's eyes flickered with purple flames, and his battle intent soared to the heavens. He said slowly, "It's a good opportunity to see how strong the peerless immortal kings of the 2 regions are." For immortal emperors, their strongest move was their grotto heaven. The other immortal emperors, such as Green Sun Immortal Emperor and the others, exchanged glances with one another. They were all wearing relaxed smiles. Judging from the current situation, the Eternal Night Immortal Emperor alone was enough to suppress Araki Takashi without them needing to make a move. Eternal Night, don't waste any more time with him. Defeat him as soon as possible, to prevent other variables from happening. Green Sun Immortal Emperor said in a deep voice. "Got it." The Eternal Night Immortal Emperor groaned as he unleashed his primordial spirit to support the grotto heaven. The void behind him suddenly collapsed, and a dark void appeared. There was not a single bit of light in it. It was his Eternal Night Grotto Heaven. Inside the grotto heaven, one would fall into a long period of darkness. It was difficult to see any light. As the grotto heaven appeared, the Eternal Night Immortal Emperor's aura skyrocketed, and his strength rose too. "It's time to end this," the Eternal Night Immortal Emperor said calmly. He reached into the grotto heaven behind him and took out a pitch-black spear. A grotto heaven spiritual treasure. After a cultivator achieved the Immortal Emperor realm, he could place his psychic artifact into the grotto heaven to be nourished and refined. As time passed, when the psychic artifact completely merged with the grotto heaven, it would evolve into a grotto heaven spiritual treasure. Every grotto heaven spiritual treasure contained the Tao arts of the cultivator's grotto heaven. The The eternal night immortal emperor stepped forward while supporting the grotto heaven. He waved the pitch-black spear in his hand and stabbed it at Wu Dao's true body with a destructive force. Wu Dao's true body remained calm. A blue light flashed between his brows, and the prison-suppressing cauldron appeared. It was emitting an ancient aura with lightning arcs circling it. The eyes of the immortal emperors glittered when they saw the prison-suppressing cauldron. It was the weapon of the Emperor of Infinity. More importantly, the prison-suppressing cauldron was the key to controlling the infernal hell. There was no grotto heaven aura on the prison-suppressing cauldron. This also confirmed everyone's speculation that Araki Takashi from the demon realm had not stepped into the grotto heaven realm at all. Many immortal emperors stared at the prison-suppressing cauldron with confused expressions, as if they had discovered something. The prison-suppressing cauldron's cultivation level had dropped. After passing the heavenly tribulation, it was only a psychic artifact now. And now, there were traces left by 10 heavenly tribulations on the prison-suppressing cauldron. Could the legend be true? Araki Takashi had really attracted the 10th heavenly tribulation? When the news spread, even the immortal emperors present scoffed, not to mention Yu Hua and the other perfected immortals. They did not believe it at all. After all, since ancient times, since the birth of life in the upper realm, there had never been a 10th heavenly tribulation. At this moment, the immortal emperors saw the 10 burn marks on the prison-suppressing cauldron with their own eyes. Only then did they vaguely realize that the legend back then was very likely true. There was really a 10th heavenly tribulation in the heavenly tribulation? Why was there no record of a 10th heavenly tribulation since ancient times? Even the outstanding martial monarchs had only overcome 9 heavenly tribulations at most. Clang. While the crowd was lost in their thoughts, the pitch-black spear and the prison-suppressing cauldron collided heavily. Sparks flew in all directions as lightning arcs danced wildly. This time, Wu Dao's true body was knocked a few steps back. However, with the help of the prison-suppressing cauldron that had overcome 10 heavenly tribulations, Wu Dao's true body managed to nullify the everlasting night immortal emperor's attack. Even though the prison-suppressing cauldron's cultivation level had dropped, it was still a monarch weapon in the past. On top of that, it was the key to suppressing the Avicii hell. Even a heavenly spiritual treasure would not be able to destroy it easily. Humph! The everlasting night immortal emperor's face turned unpleasant when he failed to suppress Wu Dao's true body with his heavenly spiritual treasure and heavenly spiritual treasure. He harumphed coldly and made his move again. This time, the everlasting night immortal emperor's blood rose as he attacked with the spear in his hand. The heavenly spiritual treasure suppressed Wu Dao's true body with a tremendous aura. He was planning to devour Araki Takashi with the everlasting night immortal emperor's heavenly spiritual treasure and refine him, turning him into nourishment for his heavenly spiritual treasure. Chapter 26:17. The night was long, and endless darkness spread. In an instant, the sky darkened, and the sun and moon lost their brilliance. The eternal night immortal emperor's grotto heaven spiritual treasure restrained the prison-suppressing cauldron and supported the grotto heaven behind him, directly devouring Wu Dao's figure. It's over. The immortal kings shook their heads slightly upon seeing this. As long as Araki Takashi was trapped in the eternal night immortal emperor's grotto heaven, no matter how powerful he would only be a piece of meat waiting to be slaughtered. Immortal King Ling Long frowned worriedly. On the demon region's side, Feng Cantillon took a deep breath and suppressed his urge to attack. He continued to observe. Wu Dao's true body had repeatedly warned him not to attack. He believed that Wu Dao's true body would not die so easily. Within the eternal night grotto heaven, the eyes of Wu Dao's true body flickered. Purple flames burned fiercely in his eyes, and his qi and blood surged. He pushed his bloodline to the limit and released the bloodline phenomenon, heaven and earth furnace. Boom! Wu Dao's true body stood in the darkness, emitting endless brilliance. Flames soared into the sky. The flames included the martial soul fire, calamity fire, red lotus fire, dragon phoenix fire, and hellfire. Even with so many flames, they were still unable to resist the eternal night grotto heaven. However, It was impossible for the eternal night grotto heaven to devour and refine Wu Dao's true body. For example, the hellfire originated from the Avicii hell. Although it was not as powerful as the Avicii hell due to the cultivation of Wu Dao's true body. However, the eternal night grotto heaven was unable to refine it. The grotto heaven was originally dark and silent. However, after it devoured Wu Dao's true body, a huge ball of flames appeared in the grotto heaven. Both sides were in a stalemate. As time passed, Wu Dao's true body's qi and blood became stronger, and the flames burned fiercely. On the other hand, the power of the eternal night grotto heaven began to gradually deplete. The eternal night immortal emperor's face darkened when he noticed this. On the battlefield, Heavenly King Luoshi chanted the name of Buddha and said, "Benefactor eternal night, you have killed the true demon Araki Takashi. You have done a great deed." However, the subduing hell cauldron is a sacred item of Buddhism. Please return it to its rightful owner. Azure Sun Immortal King smiled and said, "The prison suppressing cauldron is an emperor weapon. It's said to be related to the Avicii hell and a forbidden secret tome. It's not just fellow Taoist Luoshi. I believe everyone here is interested in the hell-suppressing cauldron." The Chipping Immortal King said indifferently, "The prison-suppressing cauldron is already ownerless. Since we're all here, we can't just hand it over to anyone." All the immortal kings present thought that Araki Takashi was dead for sure. They had already begun to discuss who would get the prison-suppressing cauldron. At that instant, the eternal night immortal emperor's cave began to tremble vigorously. In the endless darkness, a flame appeared, growing brighter and brighter. Then, the ball of fire fell onto the battlefield. A figure stood amidst the flames. It was Araki Takashi from the infernal realm. All the immortal kings frowned when they saw this. What was going on? Not only did the eternal night cave fail to refine Araki Takashi, but it spat him out instead? Sensing the gazes around him, the eternal night immortal king's expression turned ugly. He gritted his teeth and said, "This demon's Tao is strange. He controls many kinds of powerful flames. It's difficult to refine him." Amitba. Heavenly King Luoshi stepped forward and said, "It seems that only I can subdue this demon." Heavenly King Luoshi came before Wu Dao's main body. Without saying a word, he summoned his cave. In an instant, the sky changed color. On the battlefield, 19 cave heavens with different Tao arts appeared, emitting a terrifying aura as they crushed toward Wu Dao's main body. Immortal King Ling Long's heart skipped a beat, and she stood up instinctively. In such a situation, even if she was in his position, she would not be able to escape. The 19 cave heavens had already sealed off all the exits in all directions. Araki Takashi might be relying on some strange Tao art to prevent himself from being devoured by the cave heavens, but under the suppression of 19 cave heavens, Araki Takashi would definitely not be able to withstand it. Immortal King Ling Long had just seen clearly that although Araki Takashi was not devoured by the cave heavens of Changya Immortal King and Heavenly King Luoshi, he had suffered a great impact, and his aura had weakened significantly. If the 19 cave heavens crushed toward Araki Takashi at the same time, there was only one outcome for him: the destruction of his body and soul. Chapter 26:18. On the peak of Jianmu Mountain. Su Zimo looked calm, but in reality, he was extremely nervous. Although Qinglian's true body was not involved and would not be affected, Wu Dao's true body would cease to exist if he failed to make this choice. Even so, it was worth it for Wu Dao's true body to take the risk. This choice was of great importance and would determine the future path of Wu Dao's true body. It was a path that no one else could replicate. Although Qinglian's true body was in Heaven and Earth Academy, that inexplicable sense of danger was still there and was faintly discernible. As his cultivation realm deepened and his combat strength increased, that sense of danger did not disappear. Instead, it intensified. Su Zimo needed Wu Dao's true body to improve further and grow to a sufficiently powerful level. On the one hand, Wu Dao's true body was stronger and could better protect Heaven Baron sect. On the other hand, if Qinglian's true body encountered any danger that could not be resolved in the future, Wu Dao's true body could be her escape route. There was another point. Wu Dao's true body intended to head to the great desolate world. If he was only at the true martial realm, he was still lacking in terms of strength. He had to become stronger so that he had the confidence to search for Dai Yu and be qualified to stand side by side with her. Beneath the divine tree of Zhenmu, 19 peerless immortal kings propped up their grotto heavens and trapped Wu Dao's true body within. They launched their final attacks and collided continuously. The 19 grotto heavens contained 19 different Dao techniques and were constantly tempering Wu Dao's true body with creaking sounds. Wu Dao's true body seemed like it could fall apart at any moment. At that time, the bones and flesh of Wu Dao's true body would be crushed into dust. In less than a few breaths, Wu Dao's true body could not hold on anymore. If it was just 1 or 2 grotto heavens, he could still use his bloodline phenomenon and heaven and earth furnace to resist for a short period of time. But now, 19 grotto heavens were united and Dao techniques surged. Even a perfected Wu Dao's true body could not withstand it. Wu Dao's real body was covered in blood. The real Wu Dao's body couldn't bear the burden anymore. Under the pressure of the 19 grotto heavens, his skin cracked, his bones were broken, and his organs were shaken. Crimson blood mist permeated both inside and outside of his body. Cough, cough, cough. Wu Dao's main body was also coughing up blood. In reality, the 19 peerless immortal kings still hadn't used their full strength. Every one of them had experienced countless life and death situations to reach their current level of cultivation. They were extremely cautious. Although they had taken action to suppress Araki Takashi, most of their attention was focused in the direction of the demon domain. They were afraid that something would happen. Araki Takashi's actions seemed a little reckless. However, if he didn't have any other tricks up his sleeve, it would be hard to understand. All the peerless immortal kings were worried that if they suppressed Araki Takashi, they would provoke Bo Sun. A few of the more than 20 peerless immortal kings didn't join the battle because they were worried about this. However, as time passed, the 19 peerless immortal kings had already severely injured Araki Takashi. The demon domain was still calm, and there were no signs of demonic cultivators at all. Everyone gradually relaxed. So this is all a peerless immortal king can do? At this moment, Wu Dao's weak voice sounded. Araki Takashi, you still have the mood to mock us now. You really don't know what's good for you. Eternal Night Immortal King sneered and said in a deep voice, Everyone, there's no need to worry. Attack with all your might and kill this demon. Destroy his body and soul. That's how it should be. Although Heavenly King Luosher was from the Buddhist sect, he was also filled with killing intent. Only by completely killing Araki Takashi would the prison's suppressing cauldron become an ownerless item again. Only then would he have a chance to obtain it. The peerless immortal kings shouted softly and used all their strength to activate the Tao skills in their grotto heavens. The power of the grotto heavens soared and suppressed Wu Dao's real body. This time, Wu Dao's real body couldn't hold on anymore. Rumble! With a loud bang, Wu Dao's real body exploded. His flesh and blood were destroyed. A huge force pierced through the void. A large area of the void collapsed deeply, and a dark black hole appeared. The terrifying power of the 19 grotto heavens not only destroyed Wu Dao's real body, but also pierced through a large area of the void. The world returned to peace. The crowd of cultivators near the divine tree of the builder wood were also dumbfounded by the scene, their faces filled with shock. Desolate Marshal of the Fiend region had caused such a huge commotion at the Nine Heavens Convention. He had just suppressed the paragons of the 2 rankings, killed the Supreme Arhat, and defeated the 7 immortal kings. He was simply fearless and arrogant. But now he had ended up like this. He was killed by 19 peerless immortal kings, and there was no corpse left. When Emo Ching saw this scene, she seemed to have lost her soul. Her face was pale and her body swayed slightly. She almost fell to the side. Fortunately, Yunju reacted in time and hurriedly supported her. Yunju sighed softly and looked back in the direction of Su Zimo at the top of Jinmu Mountain. This was Su Zimo's secret. She couldn't say it out loud, and she didn't know how to comfort him. He died just like that? Jun Yu's expression was complicated, and her eyes were a little confused. She and Araki Takashi had just met by chance and had a short fight. Araki Takashi had left a deep impression on her. Since she started cultivating, Araki Takashi was the first and only person who made her feel that she couldn't resist and couldn't resist. Araki Takashi's existence even made her feel a sense of despair. No matter how hard she cultivated, she couldn't catch up with this person. June, you didn't have much prejudice against the demon territory and fiendish cultivators. Araki Takashi's death made her feel deeply regretful. Mother, Araki Takashi, she died just like that? Lin Luo couldn't believe it, and a trace of sadness flashed across her eyes. Back when the siblings were trapped in Langfeng City, it was because of Araki Takashi that they managed to escape. No matter where Araki Takashi came from, he was their savior. Immortal King Ling Long sighed and shook her head slightly. She muttered softly, he should have died. Even though Immortal King Ling Long knew the secrets of heaven, she really couldn't imagine how Araki Takashi could have survived under the suppression of 19 grotto heavens. She instinctively looked at Su Zimo in the direction of the divine firmament immortal realm. At the same time, on the demon territory side, Feng Cantian, Yen Beichen, Ming Zhen, and Ji Yaoxue also looked in Su Zimo's direction. Everyone who knew Araki Takashi's true identity wanted an answer. Or rather, they wanted to find a glimmer of hope. At that moment, Su Zimo was staring at the dark and deep shattered void under the divine builder tree. His gaze became brighter, and a smile even appeared on his face. Success. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators around, Su Zimo even wanted to roar to the sky. After Wu Dao's true body was destroyed in body and soul by the 19 grotto heavens, Su Zimo had indeed lost contact with Wu Dao's true body. However, this lasted for a very short time. In just a few breaths, he could once again sense the aura of Wu Dao's true body. In his senses, the aura of Wu Dao's true body rapidly increased from its initial weak state to an unimaginably exaggerated speed, becoming stronger and stronger. An even more powerful and terrifying Araki Takashi was about to return to the world. Chapter 26:19. While he was in seclusion in the Avicii Hell, Wu Dao's true body had never stopped deducing Wu Dao's technique. When he was about to come out of seclusion, he had already comprehended the crux of it. He only lacked some details and opportunities. In other words, it was unrealistic for Wu Dao's true body to step into the next realm of Wu Dao in a short period of time. However, at the same time, Wu Dao's true body had a flash of inspiration as he had read too many ancient scriptures. Perhaps before he stepped into the next realm of Wu Dao, he could use another method to condense a grotto heaven and become a demon king. The appearance of Wu Dao's true body was an anomaly. It jumped out of the 3 realms and was not part of the 5 elements. His true body's existence was Wu Dao's fruit from the beginning. A normal Dao fruit condensed the cultivator's Dao techniques and cultivation essence. There were countless inheritances, secret techniques, and comprehensions. However, Wu Dao's fruit condensed the essence of Wu Dao's profundities. Not only did it receive the blessing of Hongyuan, but it also had Wu Dao's will and the faith of all living beings. The convergence of all sorts of powers and coincidences gave birth to a Dao fruit with the aura of life. It could be said to be unprecedented. Up until now, his true body had been at the true martial realm. He had fused Wu Dao's technique into his bones, flesh, and blood, forging and tempering the true Wu Dao's body. However, in reality, the true Wu Dao's body was also a Dao fruit. The Dao body was the Dao fruit, and the Dao fruit was the Dao body. The two were inseparable. Since ancient times, only Wu Dao's true body had such a situation. It was recorded in many Dao legacies that the prerequisite to condensing a grotto heaven was to shatter the Dao fruit. With the immense power from the shattering of the Dao fruit, one could break through the void outside their body and open up a chamber that reached the heavens and connected the 3 realms. That was a grotto heaven. This process was extremely dangerous. If the Dao fruit was shattered and the accumulated power was insufficient to support a grotto heaven, it meant that the breakthrough would fail. Either they died, or they could settle for the next best thing, becoming a half-step grotto heaven. Although their lifespan would increase, they would have no hope of stepping into the Grotto Heaven realm. Wu Dao's true body wanted to shatter the real Wu Dao's body. The real Wu Dao body was the fruit of Wu Dao. Shattering the real Wu Dao's body meant that the Dao fruit was shattered. It was also possible to open up a cave room and form a Grotto Heaven. This Grotto Heaven originated from Wu Dao's original body, and the existence of Wu Dao's original body was an anomaly. In other words, if this Grotto Heaven was born, it was extremely likely that it would jump out of the 3 realms and the 5 elements, evolving into a variant Grotto Heaven. This thought was too frightening. One had to know that the process of breaking through to the heavenly Grotto Heaven was extremely dangerous even for an ordinary Dao fruit. Like Wu Dao's true body, whether or not the real Wu Dao's body was like a Dao fruit, able to break into the heavenly Grotto Heaven after shattering was still unknown. If he failed, Wu Dao's main body would have to settle for the next best thing. He wouldn't even have the chance to become a half-step Grotto Heaven. When ordinary perfected immortals tried to break through to the Grotto Heaven realm, they would only shatter their Dao fruit. What Wu Dao's true body wanted to shatter was the real Wu Dao's body that he had condensed. Once he failed, his body and soul would be destroyed and his soul would dissipate. Moreover, his real Wu Dao's body had already been cultivated to perfection. He really thinks he can do whatever he wants with the prison-suppressing cauldron. He doesn't know that if we work together to seal the void, his prison-suppressing cauldron is just a decoration. At the mention of the prison-suppressing cauldron, all the peerless immortal kings looked at the hole in the void. The prison-suppressing cauldron was floating there. Amitba. Immortal King Luo Shun chanted softly and rushed to the prison-suppressing cauldron. He reached out and grabbed it. Monk Luo Shun, you're too impatient. Immortal King Azure's son and the others also made their moves. The 19 Grotto Heavens appeared again and collided in the air. Wait, stop. Immortal King Luo Shun suddenly frowned and shouted. What? You monk, what are you up to? Immortal King Chipping sneered. The void here has been sealed. Without an explanation from the prison-suppressing cauldron, no one can leave. Immortal King Luo Shun quickly said, there's something strange about the prison-suppressing cauldron. I can't move it. How is that possible? Immortal King Everlasting Night moved to the side of the prison-suppressing cauldron and reached out to grab it. The prison-suppressing cauldron still did not move, as if it was firmly sucked in by the dark and deep black hole behind it. Only then did the Immortal Kings realize that something was wrong. Why hasn't this void healed after so long? Immortal King Azure's son narrowed his eyes and asked. Although the battle between immortal kings could shatter the void, due to the laws of heaven and earth, the void would quickly recover and return to normal. But now, this pitch-black void had yet to heal. The immortal kings stared at the dark black hole not far away. Their gazes froze, and their expressions suddenly changed. In the depths of this black hole, a figure faintly appeared, as if it had become one with this black hole. If you want to take the cauldron, you'll have to ask for my permission. A voice rang out from the black hole, shocking the heavens. Chapter 26:20. This voice, all the immortal kings stared at the gloomy space not far away, and their expressions were indeterminate. The immortals and monks near the divine tree were dumbfounded, their faces filled with disbelief. Araki Takashi. This is the voice of Araki Takashi from the demon domain. How is this possible? Wasn't Araki Takashi killed by the joint forces of the 19 peerless immortal kings and destroyed his body and soul? Even the void was pierced through, but Araki Takashi is still alive? Mo Qing was overjoyed. She subconsciously clenched her fists and looked at the figure that gradually appeared in the dark void. She didn't dare to look away, as if she was afraid that the figure would disappear again. Yunju heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Su Zimo, who was on the peak of Jianmu Mountain, somewhat reproachfully. He seems to have become stronger? Junyu looked at the dark void and murmured softly. On the demon domain's side, Feng Kentian and the others finally relaxed and smiled. Although Araki Takashi was only Wu Dao's true body, if Araki Takashi died, there might be a huge turmoil in the Heaven Baron sect. On the peak of Jianmu Mountain, Immortal King Ling Long also heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that Araki Takashi was fine. However, she looked at the dark void with a confused expression. Even with her knowledge, she couldn't see how Wu Dao's true body came back to life. She could only roughly determine that after this incident, Wu Dao's true body had evolved a grotto heaven that belonged to him. Beside the divine tree of Jianmu, Wu Dao's true body, wearing a silver mask, slowly walked out of the dark void. He was wearing a purple robe and looked no different from before. However, Immortal King Qingyang and the others could clearly sense that Araki Takashi had become even more terrifying at this moment. They could sense the aura of a grotto heaven from Araki Takashi's body. Grotto heaven realm? All the immortal kings frowned with solemn expressions. The dark cave on Araki Takashi's body was strange and ever-changing. It was as if it had merged with his entire body and was faintly discernible. How could this be? The immortal kings were puzzled. Out of caution, they didn't act rashly. The heavenly abode created by Araki Takashi in front of them seemed to be vastly different from the heavenly abodes they knew. Normally speaking, the shattering of a cultivator's Dao fruit occurred outside their body. After all, the shattering of a Dao fruit would release a tremendous amount of energy that could even pierce through the void. If it was placed inside one's body, it would be enough to blast one's physical body into ashes. Before he could form his grotto heaven, he had already died. In other words, when a cultivator became an immortal king, they would form a heavenly abode outside their body. Although the grotto heaven was outside the body, it was closely related to the body. With the help of the grotto heaven, one could connect to the heavens and plunder the heaven and earth yuan qi. And Araki Takashi's grotto heaven seemed to be located within his body? Inner grotto heaven? In fact, the martial Dao true body's paradise was neither external nor internal. To be precise, Wu Dao's paradise was his grotto heaven. The reborn Wu Dao's paradise was already indistinguishable from this grotto heaven. Wu Dao's paradise had returned to the world as a grotto heaven. In terms of cultivation level, Wu Dao's paradise was still at the true martial realm, and the real Wu Dao's body was at the perfected level. However, with the help of the real Wu Dao's body's uniqueness, he had formed his grotto heaven in another way and become a demon king first. Because his Dao body was the Dao fruit, no one could replicate this path. Eternal Night Immortal King narrowed his eyes and said faintly, "Araki Takashi, you're still alive. You do have some tricks up your sleeve. From the looks of it, you seem to have profited from a disaster? Amit Ba." Heavenly King Luoshan said slowly, "Since Araki Takashi is still alive, we can just kill him again." "That's right," Azure's Sun Immortal King said in a low voice. "Everyone, let's work together. There can't be any mistakes this time." In a few words, the 19 peerless immortal kings once again propped up their grotto heavens and surrounded Wu Dao's paradise. "You still want to kill me?" Wu Dao's paradise looked at the 19 peerless immortal kings charging over and shook his head slightly. He said calmly, "You're too naive." As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Dao's paradise also launched a counterattack. Without any unnecessary movements, he raised his hand and punched Heavenly King Luoshan, who was charging over. This punch not only contained Wu Dao's techniques, but also the power of this new grotto heaven. Boom! Wu Dao's paradise's fist collided with Heavenly King Luoshan's paradise. In fact, this was also the collision between Wu Dao's paradise and Heavenly King Luoshan's paradise. Heaven and earth trembled as if letting out a sorrowful cry. The two sides were in a stalemate in midair for a moment. Heavenly King Luoshan's expression changed drastically. His paradise could not hold on any longer. Cracks appeared faintly on it, and it could collapse at any time. How is this possible? Araki Takashi has just been crowned as the King of Grotto Heavens. It's just a small grotto heaven. My paradise can't even withstand it? Heavenly King Luoshan was shocked and furious. The reason Wu Dao's paradise could unleash such an attack was not just because of a small grotto heaven. It was because of the perfected true Wu Dao body and the small grotto heaven that he could unleash such shocking power. At the same time, Wu Dao's paradise's paradise launched a counterattack. Including the first punch, he threw 19 punches in succession, targeting the 19 immortal kings present. When he was at the perfected true martial realm, Wu Dao's Paradise's paradise could suppress the Paradise's paradise immortal kings. Now, Wu Dao's Paradise's power had skyrocketed, and he could completely suppress the peerless immortal kings present. The moment he transformed into his paradise, the situation of this battle had completely changed. Boom, boom, boom. A series of loud bangs shook heaven and earth. The void beneath the divine builder tree was constantly being torn apart. The abodes of the 19 peerless immortal kings were struck by Wu Dao's true body to the point they were on the verge of collapse, and they were utterly unable to resist. How can he be so powerful? The 19 supreme immortal kings were shocked. Even though the peerless immortal kings had surrounded Wu Dao's main body, in reality, they were already facing a situation where they could collapse at any moment. As long as one of them showed signs of cowardice and chose to retreat, the rest of the supreme immortal kings might follow suit and retreat. The 19 supreme immortal kings were still hesitating. After all, Araki Takashi had just stepped into the Grotto Heaven realm, and they had been famous for many years. Now that there were 19 immortal kings joining forces, it was really not good for them to retreat. While Green Sun Immortal King and the others were hesitating, Wu Dao's true body didn't give them any time to think. Swallow! Wu Dao opened his heavenly abode and shouted. His figure seemed to have disappeared, and a huge and strange dark grotto heaven appeared in midair. It kept spinning, pulling and tearing apart the surrounding 19 grotto heavens. The 19 grotto heavens were already on the verge of collapse under the counterattack of Wu Dao's true body just now. Now, being torn apart by this huge force, they couldn't hold on at all and completely collapsed. The endless power of the grotto heavens was devoured by Wu Dao's dark grotto heaven. Some broken fragments of the grotto heavens were even devoured by Wu Dao's dark grotto heaven. Normal grotto heavens were connected to the heavens and the three realms. They could crazily plunder and absorb the essence energy between heaven and earth, remove impurities and refine them, allowing the grotto heaven to gradually grow. As for Wu Dao's grotto heaven, it was an anomaly that had already jumped out of the three realms. It was very difficult for this grotto heaven to grow even if it absorbed the essence energy of heaven and earth. Only by absorbing and refining Dao arts and devouring other grotto heavens could it transform. Chapter 26-21. Immortal King Qingyang and the others suddenly realized that the grotto heavens they had condensed were being continuously devoured by the dark grotto heaven that Araki Takashi had transformed into. Their grotto heavens were being pulled and torn apart. The immortal kings were shocked. This Araki Takashi's grotto heaven was actually able to devour their grotto heavens. Since ancient times, countless geniuses had been born. There were also some monsters who had cultivated terrifying grotto heavens that possessed the power of devouring. However, even if they had cultivated such a devouring grotto heaven, they would at most devour the other party's mystic arts, grotto heaven power, or divine weapons and magic treasures. No immortal king dared to devour the other party's grotto heaven like Araki Takashi did. One had to know that each of their grotto heavens was condensed from their cultivation profoundness. It could be said that each immortal king was the only god in their respective grotto heavens. Devouring the other party's grotto heaven meant devouring the Dao techniques contained in the other party's grotto heaven. And the Dao techniques in each grotto heaven were different. Once one forcibly devoured the other party's Dao techniques and integrated them into one's own grotto heaven, it meant that there would be an intense conflict of Dao techniques in one's own grotto heaven. This was equivalent to shifting the battlefield to one's own grotto heaven. If one couldn't suppress it, one's own grotto heaven would explode and one's Dao would vanish without waiting for the other party to make a move. In the top auction houses of the upper realm, there would indeed be some priceless treasures that would be circulated, such as the grotto heaven fragments of fallen immortal kings. These grotto heaven fragments contain the Dao techniques of fallen immortal kings themselves. For some grotto heaven realm experts, they could use a long time to gradually digest and refine these fragments and comprehend the Dao techniques within. There wouldn't be too much of a conflict. For Araki Takashi to forcefully devour their grotto heavens was simply an unprecedented act of madness. Moreover, Araki Takashi didn't just want to devour the grotto heaven of one peerless immortal king. He even wanted to devour the grotto heavens of 19 peerless immortal kings in one go. What a big appetite! Aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? Eternal Night Immortal King's expression was furious as he shouted loudly. One had to understand that they were all still alive, in their peak states. The heavenly passages not only contained their Tao techniques, but also their powerful wills. This Araki Takashi was too overbearing and unreasonable. Not only did he want to devour their Taoist techniques, he also wanted to subdue their wills. Heavenly King Luoshan activated his primordial spirit, and the large paradise behind him shone with Buddhist light. It was filled with boundless golden light, and he said solemnly, "Since this devil wants to die, we shall grant him his wish." The 19 peerless immortal kings surged with their chi and blood, forcefully supporting the large grotto heaven, and continued to pressure Wu Dao's original body. Wu Dao's figure was faintly discernible in the dark cave. Facing the 19 heavenly grotto heavens, he did not reject any of them and devoured them with all his might. If it was an ordinary abode, it would indeed be unable to directly devour the abodes of other immortal kings. However, the abode of Wu Dao's main body was a variant, and it wasn't in the 3 dimensions, so it wasn't restricted by the laws of this expanse of the heavens and the earth. In a short period of time, Wu Dao's main body's grotto heaven couldn't refine the 19 large grotto heavens. However, his grotto heaven was like a bottomless abyss, and it was like a sea that could swallow hundreds of rivers. It would first devour the Tao techniques of the 19 large grotto heavens, and then slowly refine them in the future. The two sides were in a stalemate for a while, and the expressions of immortal King Qingyang and the others turned ugly. Araki Takashi devoured their different Tao techniques, but not only did the dark grotto heaven not explode, it became even more terrifying. The area of the grotto heaven became even larger, and its devouring power became even stronger. Immortal King Qingyang and the others could clearly feel that the Tao techniques contained in their grotto heavens were weakening, and their power was also weakening. If this continued, their hundreds of thousands of years of cultivation might be devoured by Araki Takashi. Their large grotto heavens might even drop in cultivation level and become small grotto heavens. This was a loss they couldn't bear. Retreat. This thought flashed through Immortal King Qingyang's mind. They couldn't delay any longer. Otherwise, before Araki Takashi's grotto heaven exploded, their large grotto heavens would have been completely devoured. While they still had the strength to break free, they had to leave as soon as possible. This Araki Takashi's Tao technique was simply too evil. Perhaps only a peak immortal king with a perfected grotto heaven would be able to firmly suppress it. Thinking of this, Immortal King Qingyang retreated and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, hold on for a while. I'll send a message to the Divine Firmament Palace." As soon as Immortal King Qingyang retreated, before he could finish speaking, the other dozen or so peerless immortal kings also retreated. The joint forces of the 19 peerless immortal kings instantly collapsed. This group of peerless immortal kings had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and each of them wished that they had 9 orifices in their hearts. Who would be foolish enough to stand in front? Wu Dao's original body appeared once again. His body spewed out many mysterious and terrifying Tao techniques, transforming into countless blazing runes that surrounded him. His entire aura soared. His eyes were like torches as he directly locked onto Eternal Night Immortal King's aura. In an instant he arrived in front of him and raised his hand, punching through the air. Eternal Night Immortal King's grotto heaven had already been torn into pieces by Wu Dao's original body, and his aura was weak. Now, facing Wu Dao's original body, Su Shi's punch could not be blocked at all. Rumble. This punch caused the heavens to collapse and the earth to split. Eternal Night Immortal King's grotto heaven completely collapsed. Wu Dao's original body's fist went straight in. After breaking Eternal Night Immortal King's grotto heaven, he still had the strength to punch Eternal Night Immortal King's chest. The powerful and terrifying force instantly shattered Eternal Night Immortal King's body into pieces. In mid-air, blood filled the air. The immortals and monks on the peak of Jianmu Mountain were shocked by this scene, and their faces were filled with fear. Eternal Night Immortal King was not an ordinary immortal king, but a peerless immortal king at the phenomenal success stage of the Grotto Heaven realm. Now, his body was actually shattered by Araki Takashi from the demon domain with a single punch. The other 18 peerless immortal kings were fearful and did not dare to step forward. If even the peerless immortal kings were like that, the remaining 100+ ordinary immortal kings would not dare to make a move either. Araki Takashi from the demon domain had just condensed his Grotto Heaven, but he was already so powerful and ferocious. He actually suppressed the immortal kings of the two domains to the point where they could not even raise their heads and avoided him. Wu Dao's original body stared at Eternal Night Immortal King. It was not because there was any deep hatred between the two of them. It was because the Tai Ching Jade Book was currently in Eternal Night Immortal King's hands. As a peerless immortal king, Eternal Night Immortal King had long expected that his body and bloodline would not be able to withstand the punch from Wu Dao's original body. Just as Wu Dao's original body's fist descended, his essence spirit attached itself to the Tai Ching Jade Book and fled into the distance with a ball of essence blood. As expected, his body was shattered by Wu Dao's original body with a single punch. A tremendous force was directed at his essence spirit and blood, but it was nullified by the power of the Tai Ching Jade Book. Eternal Night Immortal King used the ball of essence blood to quickly condense his body. He tore open the rift and prepared to flee back to the Grand Firmament Immortal Realm. Wu Dao's original body chased after him like a shadow. Just as Eternal Night Immortal King tore open the rift, Wu Dao's original body had already caught up to him. At that instant, an unexpected change took place. Chapter 26-22. Suddenly, an evil energy burst out from the void that the Celestial King of Eternal Night tore open. A dark green light flashed and disappeared into the center of the Celestial King of Eternal Night's eyebrows. The Celestial King of Eternal Night's attention was focused on Wu Dao's real body, who was chasing after him. He did not expect a deadly attack to be hidden in the void in front of him. He also did not expect that at the continent of the Nine Clouds meeting, apart from Araki Takashi, who would dare to kill him in front of so many people. The Celestial King of Eternal Night was being chased by Wu Dao's real body. He was already in a state of panic and he was caught off guard. He was killed by the dark green light that suddenly flashed in the void. The peerless Celestial King had died on the spot. The Celestial Kings were stunned. Since the continent of the Nine Clouds meeting, although the cultivators on the True Celestial Ranking Board and the Arhat Ranking Board had suffered great losses, and even the Supreme Arhat was killed by Araki Takashi, no Celestial King had died yet. The death of a Celestial King was a serious matter. Moreover, it was the death of a peerless Celestial King. The death of a peerless Celestial King might even alarm the Imperial Emperors. Wu Dao's real body frowned slightly and suddenly stopped. The existence hidden in the depths of the void made him feel an extremely dangerous aura. It was very likely that this expert had already surpassed the Grotto Heaven realm and reached the Imperial realm. It was precisely because of this that he was able to kill the Everlasting Night Immortal King in such a clean manner before swiftly vanishing. Who was this person? How long had he been here? Was he an enemy of the Celestial King of Eternal Night, or was he here for the Tai Ching Jade Book, or something else? What made the Martial Dao true body feel a little strange was that the green brilliance seemed to be familiar, and it gave him a feeling of extreme disgust. Could it be the Sorcerer tribe? It was very difficult for a Celestial King to die after reaching the Celestial King realm. The fact that he could kill the Celestial King of Eternal Night so easily showed how terrifying his strength was. Wu Dao's real body did not continue to chase after him. He had completely lost track of the mysterious expert's aura. This person had been lying in ambush here. After killing the Celestial King of Eternal Night, he disappeared as if he had never appeared. His spiritual sense kept warning him. He could not stay here for long. Even without the warning of spiritual sense, Wu Dao's real body. Not far behind him, a powerful being was Celestial King of Eternal Night was awakening. The Divine Builder Tree. The Divine Builder Tree was King of Eternal Night or for some other reason, the builder of the tree. With the strength of the Divine Builder Tree, all the Celestial Kings present, except for the celestial emperors, had to retreat. The grand of the heaven. Of the emperor heaven. Emperor was eternal, the was-is from the emperor king is emperors of emperor. He had already achieved his goal of using the peerless immortal king to shatter his true martial Dao body and condense his grotto heaven. There was no need for him to stay here. Return to the heaven wasteland sect immediately. Is? Had he. Once the ancient divine tree was awakened, it would not care if you were from the 9 heavens, pure land, or demon realm. Within the area under its control, all the creatures that intruded would be regarded as alien, as a provocation and a threat to it. Feng Kentian heard the message from Wu Dao's real body and decisively tore the void apart. He took Yen Beichen, Ming Zhen, and the others into the space tunnel and disappeared. On the other side, the divine builder tree was completely awakened. Its body was emitting a violent life force. As if it had sensed the thousands of living beings around it, its thick branches danced. It was like many green pythons, filled with dazzling brilliance. They were enraged. Put. A few branches swept across and whipped the crowd of more than 100 immortal kings. More than a dozen immortal kings were sent flying, their bodies exploding. Some of the immortal kings released their grotto heavens, but they were all shattered by the branches. Ordinary immortal kings were powerless against the divine builder tree. If an immortal king was already like this, then all the true immortals and arhats present would probably be buried here if all the branches of the divine tree of Jianmu danced in the air. Retreat! Immortal King Qin Yang roared. With his ability, he could not take care of too many people. He could only bring the 3 fairies and the other true immortals and prodigies of the divine firmament celestial realm, who were closest to him. He broke through the void and prepared to escape back to the divine firmament celestial realm. As for the tens of thousands of true immortals of the divine firmament celestial realm on the peak of Jianmu Mountain, he could not care about them. Immortal King Ling Long remained on the peak of Jianmu Mountain and did not leave the mountain. At this moment, she first brought Lin Lei and Lin Luo with her. Her gaze turned and landed on Su Zimo. She sent a voice transmission to him. "Don't worry, I'll bring you out of here first." The immortal kings could not care too much. They could only bring the true immortals and arhats around them and break through the void, preparing to escape. However, at this moment, a huge green halo suddenly burst out from the divine builder tree's body. It quickly spread and enveloped the surrounding 50 kilometers. The void that had been broken by the immortal kings was enveloped by this green halo and instantly repaired. The space tunnel also disappeared. The void healed and the space tunnel disappeared, blocking all the cultivators from the 2 regions. All the immortal kings sucked in a breath of cold air and were secretly shocked. What was this divine builder tree trying to do? Could it be that this divine builder tree wanted to kill all of them here? Wu Dao's original body could have left immediately. However, when he saw the green halo emitted by the divine builder tree, he suddenly stopped. It was different from the panic and fear of the others. Wu Dao's original body looked at the green halo and seemed to have thought of something. Purple flames danced in his eyes as he pondered. A tree branch was flung down. It cut through the void and smashed into the Jianmu Mountain, causing the entire mountain to collapse. The dozens of true immortals and arhats on the mountain could not dodge in time and were directly killed by the divine builder tree branch. Their bodies and souls were destroyed, and their souls scattered. On the divine builder tree's body, tens of thousands of thick branches had been raised and were about to lash down at any time. At that time, thousands of divine builder tree branches would descend. Not to mention the true immortals and arhats present, even the entire Jianmu Mountain might be destroyed. Perhaps only the immortal kings would be able to escape the attack range of the divine builder tree with the help of their own movement techniques. The rest of them would all be buried here. One should know that the geniuses of the 2 regions had gathered in this continent of the 9 clouds meeting. If the true immortals and arhats from the 2 regions were killed here, it would be an irreparable loss to the 9 clouds celestial realm and the pure land of bliss. The current situation was completely out of control. It was completely out of the control of the immortal kings. The divine builder tree had awakened in advance. The immortal kings only wanted to protect themselves and escape from this place. No one cared about Wu Dao's original body anymore. At this moment, an irresistible pressure came from the direction of the 9 clouds celestial realm and shrouded the divine builder tree. On the other side, in the direction of the pure land of bliss, a resplendent and sacred golden light pierced through the layers of clouds, splitting open the sky and sprinkling down, dispersing the green halo around the divine builder tree. Chapter 26-23. In the direction of the 9 heavens immortal region, a figure emitting a terrifying aura slowly appeared, as if he was the ruler of the world. Under such a vast and majestic pressure, not to mention the true immortal Arhat, even the immortal kings and heavenly kings present could not withstand it. The immortal emperor had appeared. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The facial features of this immortal emperor were somewhat similar to Qin Su's. If he was not mistaken, this should be immortal Emperor Tai Shao. Immortal Emperor Tai Shao stood in the air. His powerful aura faced the divine tree of Jianmu from afar, temporarily blocking the thousands of branches. He seemed to be communicating with something. However, the divine tree had gone berserk. It didn't give the grand firmament immortal emperor any face and emitted an even more terrifying aura. The tens of thousands of branches instantly broke free from immortal Emperor Tai Xiao's control and enveloped the Jianmu mountain range. The thick branches of the thousands of Jianmu trees were luxuriant and could be said to have covered the sky. A large shadow shrouded down, causing one to feel suffocated. Grand Firmament Immortal Emperor's face turned ugly. With his battle prowess, he was unable to fight against the enraged divine builder tree. In the blink of an eye, the Grand Firmament Immortal Emperor made up his mind. He waved his sleeves and protected the cultivators of the Grand Firmament Immortal Realm before retreating into the distance. With his strength, if he chose to protect the cultivators from the 9 firmaments Immortal Realm and the Pure Lands, he would be severely injured by the divine builder tree. As an immortal emperor who ruled over an immortal realm, he naturally wasn't willing to take this risk. He had done everything he could to protect the immortals of the Grand Firmament Immortal Realm. Upon seeing this, the cultivators from the other 2 domains quickly realized the Supreme Firmament Celestial Realm's intention. They had been mercilessly abandoned. The immortals and monks were filled with grief and indignation. Even though they were filled with resentment, they did not dare to offend Tai Shao Immortal Emperor. Moreover, they did not have the opportunity to do so. The attack of the divine Skywood tree had already enveloped the entire Jianmu mountain. The cultivators from the 2 upper regions were about to lose their lives on the spot. It was at this moment that the golden light from the direction of the pure land of bliss shifted rapidly. It passed through the gaps between the leaves and sprinkled on the immortals and monks on the summit of Jianmu mountain. Everyone's bodies seemed to be plated with a layer of sacred gold leaf, shining brightly. Rumble! Tens of thousands of builder tree branches smashed down, shaking the heavens and earth as a series of loud noises erupted. The Jianmu mountain range beneath them had completely collapsed. However, the sacred golden light that enveloped the immortals and monks blocked most of the damage from the divine tree of builder wood. At some point in time, a middle-aged monk stood in front of everyone. He faced the divine tree of the builder tree alone and protected everyone. The Buddhist imperial emperor had arrived. Compared to the divine builder tree, the middle-aged monk's figure was extremely small. His body was not even as thick as a branch of the divine builder tree. However, at this moment, before the crowd's gazes, the middle-aged monk's back appeared so tall and imposing. Especially when compared to immortal Emperor Tai Shao, the difference in level between the 2 was obvious. Benefactors, please retreat. I can't hold on for much longer. The middle-aged monk's figure swayed slightly, as if he had suffered a great impact, causing his voice to turn hoarse. The group of immortals and monks felt as if they had just awoken from a dream. They hurriedly activated their movement techniques and fled into the distance. The middle-aged monk's golden light defeated the green halo emitted by the divine builder tree. This meant that immortal kings could tear open the void and leave this place at any time. When Wu Dao saw the two imperial emperors, he did not dare to hesitate. He quickly tore open the void and entered the space tunnel. Then, he quickly took out the prison's suppressing cauldron to protect his back before looking in the direction of the middle-aged monk. As an imperial emperor, the middle-aged monk naturally had the opportunity to attack him. He took out the prison's suppressing cauldron to prevent any accidents from happening. For some reason, the middle-aged monk could not spare any time to deal with the divine builder tree, or the middle-aged monk was injured and did not want to deal with Wu Dao. In short, the middle-aged monk did not attack him from the moment Wu Dao's body tore open the void to the moment he left this place. However, when Wu Dao turned around and looked at the middle-aged monk, he realized that the middle-aged monk was also looking at him. The two of them looked at each other. For some reason, Wu Dao suddenly felt an indescribable sense of familiarity in his heart. The middle-aged monk had handsome features and a benevolent face. He gave people a good impression of him. However, Wu Dao was sure that he had never seen this person before. How could this be? Where did this sense of familiarity come from? Not only Wu Dao, but Qinglian's true body was also recalling. Su Zimo believed that the sense of familiarity that flashed through Wu Dao's true body was not without reason. The cultivators of the Nine Heavens Immortal Domain and the Pure Lands finally escaped the attack range of the Divine Builder Tree with the help of the middle-aged monk. The cultivators' faces were pale. They looked in the direction of the Divine Builder Tree with lingering fear. If it was not for the appearance of the Buddhist emperor, they would have been buried under the rubble on the peak of the Divine Builder Mountain. As expected of a Buddhist, he's benevolent and sacrificed himself to save others. His realm is high. I'm really impressed. That's right. This eminent monk has saved all of our lives. We should repay him with everything we have. We won't forget him until we die. I wonder who this Buddhist emperor is. What's his Dharma name? Many cultivators who had escaped looked at the middle-aged monk in the distance and could not help but whisper. Zen Master Huiwen pondered for a moment and said thoughtfully, "This senior looks like Venerable Lu Brahma." After the middle-aged monk appeared, his back was facing the immortals and monks so they could not see him clearly. Not long after, the middle-aged monk retreated from the Divine Builder Tree and arrived here. Everyone could see clearly that the middle-aged monk's kasaya was still stained with some blood. It was obvious that he was injured when he fought against the Divine Builder Tree just now. It's really the master of Lu Brahma. When Zen Master Huiwen saw the middle-aged monk, his heart skipped a beat. He was pleasantly surprised and hurried forward. He put his palms together and bowed. "Greetings, Senior Lu Brahma." He was not the only one. A few heavenly kings of the Buddhist sects recognized the middle-aged monk and hurried forward to greet him. They were surprised and delighted with deep respect in their eyes. When the other Buddhist monks saw that, they no longer had any doubts and were overjoyed. They hurriedly knelt down and chanted the name of the Sixth Brahma Heavenly Lord loudly. Sixth Brahma Heavenly Lord. Su Zimo suddenly recalled a piece of information that Lu Ping had told him in Heaven and Earth Academy. It was said that when Emperor Bo Sun appeared, he disappeared after killing a few heavenly kings. Only the sixth Brahma Heavenly King survived. After that calamity, the sixth Brahma Heavenly King gained enlightenment and advanced in his Buddhist Dharma. He became an emperor and was known as the Sixth Brahma Heavenly Lord. This eminent monk even opened a forum in the Buddhist sects and spread the Tao. Countless Buddhist monks followed him and he had a huge influence in recent years. Su Zimo frowned and fell into deep thought. He had a feeling that he had overlooked something. Chapter 26-24. At this moment, Su Zimo was not standing with the cultivators from the divine firmament immortal realm. Instead, he was standing beside Immortal King Ling Long. Immortal King Ling Long did not notice Su Zimo's abnormality. Instead, she looked in the direction of Sixth Brahma Heaven Lord and said with a sigh, as expected of an eminent monk from the Pure Lands, "It's admirable that he has such a big heart." Lin Luo, who was beside her, also said softly, "Compared to this eminent monk, Immortal Emperor Tai Zhao's cultivation level is far inferior." It's not just his cultivation level. This senior 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's cultivation level seems to be higher than immortal Emperor Tai Zhao's. Immortal King Ling Long pondered for a while and said, I heard that this senior has just entered the Arch Realm. It's quite rare for him to be able to cultivate to this level. Su Zimo was deep in thought, trying to recall. When he heard Immortal King Ling Long's words, a thought flashed through his mind. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He finally remembered why Wu Dao's original body felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity when he saw 6 Brahma Heaven Lord. It was because Wu Dao's original body had felt this sense of familiarity from Bo Sun's body. Su Zimo originally did not connect Bo Sun with 6 Brahma Heaven Lord of the Pure Lands. However, at this moment, he recalled the information that Lu Ping had told him and what Immortal King Ling Long had said just now. Everything seemed to make sense. When Bo Sun was born, all the heavenly kings of the Buddhist sect who had surrounded him had died, including the real 6 Brahma Heavenly Kings. The reason why the 6 Brahma Heavenly Kings did not die was because the 6 Brahma Heavenly Kings were transformed from Bo Sun. Others might not have this ability, but Bo Sun cultivated both Buddhism and demon. Many years ago, he had already reached an extremely high level of attainment in Buddhism. Now that he'd struggled free from the Avicii hell, his comprehension in the Buddhist Tao had probably already attained a level that others were unable to imagine. If Bo Sun transformed into a Buddha, no one would be able to see through it except for great emperors. This also explained why Bo Sun seemed to have disappeared from the world after he was born. There was no news of him in the demon domain. This was because Imperial Lord Bushuan wasn't in the infernal domain at all. He had long since transformed into the 6 Brahma Kings of Buddhism, cultivating openly in the pure land of bliss. Of course, going through a death tribulation and achieving enlightenment were all just illusions. Emperor Bo Sun was an expert amongst emperors. What he needed to do was to suppress and conceal his original realm, and then slowly reveal it. In the eyes of others, it was a blessing in disguise, allowing him to ascend to the throne. Bo Sun's true combat strength was far above immortal Emperor Tai Zhao's. Naturally, he could withstand the Divine Tree's attack. Su Zimo even suspected that 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's reluctance and the bloodstain on his chest were all done on purpose by Bo Sun. This was the only way to win over the hearts of the people. In fact, 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's performance just now was quite good. It wasn't just the monks from the pure land of bliss. Even the cultivators from the 9 firmaments immortal realm admired 6 Brahma Heaven Lord. Even immortal King Ling Long was full of praise for 6 Brahma Heaven Lord. Su Zimo's expression was solemn. If his guess was right, 6 Brahma Heaven Lord was Imperial Lord Bushuan. Then, 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's actions of opening a Buddhist forum and spreading Taoist techniques were terrifying. Back then, Imperial Lord Bushuan had already unified the infernal domain. When he was conquering the pure land of bliss, he was besieged by 2 Imperial Lords. Now, he had reappeared in the world, but hid his identity and transformed into a Buddha. It was very likely that he was after the entire pure land of bliss. If 6 Brahma Heaven Lords' influence in the pure land of bliss grew and eventually reached the peak, there would be countless believers and monks under his command. Bo Sun's ambition was terrifying. Then, the pure land of bliss would very likely become the 2nd infernal domain. When cultivators fell into blind worship and faith, they would no longer be rational. Whether they were a Buddha or a demon only depended on a single thought. At that time, the pure land of bliss would very likely fall into endless slaughter, and blood would flow like rivers. Su Zimo didn't dare to continue thinking about it. Zimo, what's wrong? At that moment, immortal King Ling Long seemed to have noticed Su Zimo's abnormality. She turned around and asked softly, "Senior, you have to be careful." Su Zimo was about to tell immortal King Ling Long about 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's identity when he suddenly felt a scorching gaze. Su Zimo subconsciously looked over and happened to meet 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's eyes. Those eyes were filled with benevolence and wisdom. However, at this moment, when those eyes looked at Su Zimo, a strange look flashed across them. Su Zimo's body trembled. He suddenly felt a chill down his spine. All the hair on his body stood on end, and his scalp tingled. That gaze, 6 Brahma Heaven Lords seemed to have sensed something. That gaze was warning him not to speak nonsense. With Imperial Lord Bushuan's means, if he wanted to kill him now, no one would be able to save him. Are you alright? Immortal King Ling Long noticed the change in Su Zimo's expression and frowned slightly. She followed Su Zimo's gaze and looked at 6 Brahma Heaven Lord not far away. 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's gaze had already shifted away. It was as if he had never looked at Su Zimo since the beginning. Su Zimo's body stiffened a little. He slowly lowered his head. Hearing Immortal King Ling Long's question, Su Zimo fell silent for a moment. In the end, he shook his head and said, "Nothing." There were 2 meanings behind 6 Brahma Heaven Master's warning gaze. First, he was threatening him. Second, he was reminding him not to speak nonsense. Su Zimo was worried that if he told Immortal King Ling Long about 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's true identity, it would bring disaster to Immortal King Ling Long, the human emperor, and the others. Even though Su Zimo didn't say anything, his strange behavior still attracted Immortal King Ling Long's attention. Her gaze inadvertently landed on 6 Brahma Heaven Master. In fact, she had felt that something was strange at the beginning. Why did 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's cultivation level increase so quickly? However, these doubts flashed through her mind. She didn't think much of it. Now, compared to Su Zimo's reaction just now, Immortal King Ling Long didn't notice 6 Brahma Heaven Lord's abnormality, but she was already wary. At this moment, Su Zimo lowered his head slightly. His eyes were gloomy, and he didn't say a word. There was something he still didn't understand. Logically speaking, Imperial Lord Bushuan had only met Wu Dao's true body. Today was the first time Qinglian's true body met 6 Brahma Heaven Lord, who was disguised as Imperial Lord Bushuan. How did 6 Brahma Heaven Lord know that he was Wu Dao's true body? This was the only possibility for 6 Brahma Heaven Lord to notice him immediately and warn him with that gaze. Imperial Lord Bushuan had once pushed Wu Dao's true body to the Avicii Great Hell. Why didn't he attack Wu Dao's true body just now? Why did he let Wu Dao's true body leave? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.